Forbidden Amish Romance. Copyright 2017 by Samantha Price. All rights reserved. Chapter 1. I'm looking forward to Adeline's wedding tomorrow. Mary Lou giggled. I used to call her Sideline only in my mind, but she's no longer on the sidelines. Get it? Adeline rhymes with sideline. Magnolia nodded. It was late at night, and Mary Lou sat on her bed with her younger cousin Magnolia, who was there for an extended visit. She's young, isn't she? She wouldn't have had time to have been on the sidelines. It angered Mary Lou that her cousin was arguing with her. Watch and learn from me. That's all I can say. Underneath her full dress, Magnolia hugged her knees to her chest. She was there hoping to find a husband, since Mary Lou's community was larger than the one she'd come from. What man do you like? You haven't told me yet. No one. Mary Lou was too embarrassed to admit that she had liked the man who was getting married the very next day, Joshua Fuller. Didn't you say that Sideline's sister married Joshua's brother? Don't call her Sideline too much. That's not nice. You did. Nay. I said in my mind I thought that, and that was just once or twice. I'm not a nasty person. Magnolia looked downward. Sorry, Mary Lou. That's okay. And you're right, Lucy married Levi, the second Fuller son, and now Adeline is marrying the third one. Who married the first? Mary Lou rolled her eyes. Do you want to hurt me? Isaac married Hazel, you fool. Magnolia's jaw dropped open. I'm not a fool, Mary Lou. I don't mean it. You've just upset me. Now her stomach was in a knot. Isaac and I were supposed to marry until Hazel snatched him right from under my nose, remember? It was dreadful. And how Isaac fell for her act, I'll never know. Mary Lou shook her head. It would be easier if she never had to think about it again, but she had to see Hazel and Isaac at the Sunday meetings every other week. What act? Forget it. Mary Lou swiped a hand through the air. I'm sorry for mentioning it, Mary Lou. I forgot. I was with him for 2 whole years. It's just not fair. I know. It's so awful. Anyway, I'm trying my best to put the whole thing behind me. That's all you can do. Who do you recommend for me? You must know someone, Magnolia asked. Nay, I don't. Stop asking. Just see who you like for yourself. Magnolia pouted. Your mom told my mom that you'd find someone for me. Who's the nicest single man? Is there one that all the girls like? There is one man, but he'd never look twice at you. Why? Who is he? Jacob Fuller. One of the Fuller boys? Yeah. Why wouldn't he look at me? Mom said one of the Fullers would be good to marry. Mary Lou stared at Magnolia, and then looked her up and down. Magnolia hadn't taken after her mother, who was slim and still attractive for her age. She'd taken after her father and had the same square-shaped face and short, chunky body. He's too handsome. He could have any woman he wanted. Even you, Mary Lou. Mary Lou shook her head. I'm not interested. Why not? Because he's not my type. Magnolia's eyebrows rose just slightly. Oh, I see. Mary Lou stared at her cousin, wondering if she was being sarcastic. Whenever she had visited Magnolia's family, her aunt had made little sarcastic digs at her. She wasn't going to stand for it from her cousin, not in her own home. And what do you mean by that? Nothing. Nothing bad. It's just that he might be good for you since you've liked all the other older Fuller boys. Mary Lou didn't know what to say. It was embarrassing that she'd liked 3 of the Fuller boys. She was sure she was a joke amongst them. That was the real reason she daren't even so much as look sideways at Jacob Fuller. She'd be a laughing stock if anyone thought she liked him. Over the past months, Mary Lou had analyzed her relationship with Isaac, and had come to realize that she, in liking Levi and Joshua, had been trying to recapture what she'd had with Isaac. Magnolia stared at her, waiting for an answer. Mary Lou had to change the subject to keep herself from being depressed. Now turn around and I'll fix your hair. Magnolia took off her prayer cap, and had just started undoing her braid when it was ripped out of her hands. I'll do it. You're way too slow at everything. Mary Lou undid the braid, took up a brush and pulled it through Magnolia's long light brown hair. Are you sure you haven't cut your hair? Magnolia turned her head to the side. Nay. Never. Why? Mary Lou pushed Magnolia's head back around to face the front. It sure looks that way. I've never cut my hair. A lot of girls cut their hair when it's too heavy. My mother cut her hair when she was younger. She had to, it was giving her headaches. She said it's thinner now and not so heavy. My mother said it's a sin for a woman to cut her hair. That's why I was asking. I didn't think you would have cut it, yet it's not long. Mom said hair grows to a certain length and stops. Maybe mine wasn't meant to be as long as yours. Your mother's not here now, so stop saying what she said. It's annoying. Magnolia swung her head around. I'm sorry, Mary Lou. Turn back around unless you want me to brush your face. Mary Lou held the brush in the air and Magnolia quickly turned around. Mary Lou resumed pulling the brush through her cousin's hair. Your hair can't be much longer than mine, Magnolia said. Well, it is. My mother said I should marry one of the Fuller boys, if I possibly can. She's heard about them, and she said any one of them would be a good catch. The brush snagged on a knot. Ah, Mary Lou, that hurt. Well, if you didn't have so many knots in your hair, I wouldn't have to yank it. Anyway, I don't think any of the Fuller boys are suitable for you. Why? You can see for yourself. You'll meet them all at the wedding, along with the baby Hazel and Isaac just had. Really? They've had a baby already? Don't sound so surprised. Sorry, I just love babies. If you want one of your own, you must do as I say. I will. I want to be married soon. Mary Lou kept brushing her cousin's hair. 1st of December. That's tomorrow. I know. I'm just saying it out loud, Mary Lou said as she rolled her eyes. I'm sorry things didn't work out for you with Isaac. Mary Lou shrugged off her cousin's comment. Choose someone you like tomorrow, and I will do my best to match you. The only stipulation I have is it can't be anyone with the last name of Fuller. Well, you can have one of the younger Fuller boys, just not Jacob Fuller. I reckon I could be a good matchmaker, but not that good. Do you have a recommendation? I've told you already, I'd prefer you to see who you like. Well, there are a couple of men I can think of who might be okay for you. You wouldn't know them, so I won't tell you until I can introduce you. Danka for helping me, Mary Lou. Mom said you would. There you go talking about your mother again. You're an adult. Stop paying so much heed to what your mother says. But don't you? Hey. I'm an adult. I sometimes discuss things with Mom, but that's all. I'm a fully grown woman. But you're living with your parents, and Mom told me you don't even pay any board. That's got nothing to do with it. My folks like to help me. I'm all they've got now that I'm the only one living here. And I'm saving all my money for when I get married, so I can have a nice home. And anyway, of course, I would help you. That's what cousins are for. Now hold this brush while I braid your hair, and with the length it is, it won't take me that long. Magnolia took hold of the brush. I want to make you just like me, Maggie. Please don't call me Maggie. I had a teacher once who called me that, and I didn't like her one bit. When I hear the name, I'm reminded of her. Magnolia's lips turned down at the corners. Okay, I'll remember that. Now, would you like to be just like me? Yeah, except married, but how are you going to do that? You'll have to change. Would you show me how? Magnolia asked. Yeah, but you'll have to do most of the work. The main thing is that you'll have to change the way you think, and that will change the way you act. I've got nothing to lose. I don't have anything at the moment. Nay, you don't. That's why your mother packed you away to live with me, so you could learn from me. I've got a job and lots of friends. And I'm up for a management position at work. That's so cool. It is. Maybe you should get a job. Mary Lou secured the end of the braid and threw it over Magnolia's shoulder. Danka. Magnolia turned around and sat cross-legged on the bed facing Mary Lou. But I don't know what to do. Neither did I before I got a job. Maybe you could get me a job where you work. Mary Lou gasped. That would be the worst thing I could ever think of. If I recommend you and you're hopeless, that would make me look bad. But I wouldn't be hopeless, I'd do a really good job. You just said you can't do anything. I couldn't recommend you. Mary Lou pressed her lips together, hoping her cousin would stop asking her about a job. Magnolia sighed. I'm sorry, Mary Lou. You're going to have to stop apologizing. I'm sorry. There you go again. Magnolia shrugged her shoulders. Mary Lou smiled. That's better. If you don't know what to say, don't open your big mouth. Magnolia nodded. I'll remember that. Chapter 2. Early in the morning, Jacob Fuller was getting ready to go to his next older brother's wedding. Joshua had purchased a house for his new wife and himself. He'd always been a good saver, and he had more money than their next older brother Levi, and more than Jacob, who was the middle brother. He was number 4 from the top and number 4 from the bottom. How do I look? Jacob looked his brother up and down. You look okay. You'll pass. Joshua raised his eyebrows. Is that it? That's as good as you'll get from me. I'm a little envious, I hate to admit. Adeline is such a nice girl. I hope I can find someone like her. Joshua laughed. There's no one like her. You might be right. Her younger sister is. Joshua cut across him. Way too young for you. Don't even think about it. Since it was his brother's wedding day, he resisted pointing out that the age difference between Joshua and Adeline was exactly the same as between himself and Catherine. You might meet someone today. Or maybe there's a girl you've overlooked, and I dare say there is. Right here under your nose. You could be right. I hear Mary Lou has a cousin staying with her. I must meet her. Can you imagine how many girls I'll disappoint when I choose just one? Jacob chuckled. You better not let Dad hear you talk like that. You're too old for a whipping, but not too old to be sat down to hear one of his hour-long lectures. Yeah, true. Are you certain Adeline's the one for you forever, and amen? Joshua stared at him. Forget it. She'd never be interested in you. Anyway, you're leaving your run a little late if you're trying to steal her away from me. I don't think I'd have any chance. She's only got eyes for you. And I've never seen you happier. And what I can't believe is that Mom even seems to like her. It's true. And that makes life much easier for me. It makes life much easier for all of us. Jacob slipped on his black coat and turned around in a circle. How do I look? The same as every day, Joshua replied. That good, eh? Joshua laughed. It sounds like you're joking, but I know you actually believe it. You know what the word says about pride? Please stop. I don't need any lectures from you. Save them for Dad to give. What would you do if you had an accident and scarred that pretty face of yours? We'll just have to hope that doesn't happen. Jacob gave him a wink. I wouldn't want to disappoint the ladies. Joshua sighed loudly, and Jacob laughed again at how exasperated his brother was with him. He knew he could get any girl he wanted, but at the same time he knew his brother was right. Looks were only surface. His wife didn't have to be attractive, he just wanted a nice girl who was bright and lively. Catherine seemed nice but a little immature for him and far too forthright. She said whatever came into her head without thinking who it might offend. There was something charming in that, but he didn't know if he would be able to live with it. There was one girl that Jacob couldn't get off his mind lately, and that was Mary Lou. The only problem was she'd liked all of his older brothers and had made no secret about it. Twice they'd had long conversations. Mary Lou was full of life. Yes, she had a vivid imagination, and maybe she was prone to exaggeration and tall stories, but that was what made her colorful. She intrigued him. For months he'd resisted her, now he was ready to do something about it, but what? The Miller household would be full of people, hundreds of them. He also had to find time to slip away secretly to meet Timothy, who was having problems of his own. He had something urgent to discuss with him. Timothy had got himself into some kind of trouble, and it sounded like something more serious than just the car accident he'd had recently. Because Timothy couldn't bear to face his parents, he wasn't going to his brother's wedding. Are you ready, Joshua? Their father's words jolted Jacob. He turned to look at his father just as Joshua said, I'm ready, but is Jacob ready? He looked over at Joshua. Are you ready? That's the question. Don't worry about me. Joshua laughed. I've been ready to marry Adeline for months. I'm glad you didn't change your mind. That would have been embarrassing. You asked her to marry you on the first date, didn't you? I did. When you know, you just know. Jacob nodded. Well, are you ready? Their father asked Joshua again. I'm ready. Don't I look it? He spun around in a circle. Yeah. Okay, I'll wait downstairs with your mother. Let's go, Jacob said to Joshua. You don't want to be late to your own wedding, do you? Joshua chuckled, and then they walked down the stairs of their parents' house. When they got to the bottom, Jacob was faced with Benjamin and Samuel. Then behind them stood their teary-eyed mother waiting by the door. You look lovely. Their mother stepped forward and gave Joshua a hug. I'm glad you're marrying Adeline Miller. She's such a good girl. Then she looked at Jacob. Now you must find someone too. I'm trying, Mom. I've been looking for years. Stop being so fussy and just choose someone. Jacob chuckled. It's not as easy as that. It was easy for Joshua. We're not there yet. Adeline might change her mind and realize it's me she loves. Joshua dug him in the ribs. Just get that buggy hitched, or you'll be the one to make me late for my own wedding. Jacob went ahead to the barn while their mother had a few last words to share with Joshua. Jacob couldn't hear what was said, and he was glad. It was probably some sentimental mumbo-jumbo. Samuel rode with their parents, while Benjamin wanted to travel in the buggy with Jacob and Joshua. As they drove to the miller's house, Benjamin, as usual, couldn't keep silent. You'll be next, Jacob. Maybe. Who will it be? I've got my heart set on someone. Joshua looked over at him. I can't believe you. What? What was all that nonsense you told me about not liking anyone and traveling to find someone? I didn't want to distract you from your wedding by telling you about my aching heart. Benjamin roared with laughter. Come on, who is she? It's Mary Lou. Mary Lou, both his brothers chorused. Yeah. And I've got to figure out a way to win her. It won't be easy, Benjamin warned. With her history of... Yeah, I don't need to be reminded, Jacob said. You need to listen. Benjamin leaned over from the back seat and said, even if she likes you, she won't put herself out on a limb again after she was rejected by our older brothers. She's got feelings, you know. I know she's got feelings. He had barely started to reply to Benjamin when Joshua butted in. Benjamin's right. I've seen Mary Lou change over the last few years. She was such a sweet girl when she first started dating Isaac, but he dated her for too long without marrying her, and then I saw hardness develop within her, and now she has a hard shell around her. And the rejections she's had since have only made that shell thicker. I can see the two of you together because you're both outgoing and lively. Yeah, you two would be great together, but you must make your moves carefully, Benjamin said. Danka for making me more nervous about this than I already am. She's already older than me, and that's one reason she might reject me, and now you're just giving me a dozen more reasons she might not want me. I'd like to see you being rejected, Joshua chuckled. Nay, Danka. I don't think I'd like it. Jacob took his hat off and ran a hand through his hair. He had so many worries today. He had to slip away and see Timothy about an urgent matter, and he also wanted to speak with Mary Lou. Since you two have definite opinions about things, what do you suggest I do? Benjamin said, plot something. Make her think she's helping you with something. Why would you take suggestions from Benjamin? Joshua asked. He's never had any experience. Benjamin poked Joshua. Hey, you could at least wait until I'm not here and then talk about me behind my back. I don't mean any offense, but what would you know? Joshua asked. It's Joshua's day, let's not talk about me anymore, Jacob said. I'll figure out what to do for myself. Just keep what I told you to yourselves. Chapter 3. What is the name of the boy I can't like again, Mary Lou? Magnolia asked as she got ready for the wedding. Jacob Fuller. He's so good-looking, same as all of the Fuller boys. Mary Lou sat on the bed in Magnolia's room waiting for her to finish dressing. I can't wait to see him. Mom said to keep my eye out for a Fuller. Mary Lou sighed, put her hands behind her head, and lay down on the bed. Yeah, you've already told me that once or twice, maybe 3 times. I have, but you made him sound so intriguing that I can't wait to see him. I won't talk to him. You can talk to him, but there wouldn't be much point. Don't waste your energy on him. Magnolia giggled. I can't wait for the wedding. You won't have to wait much longer. Mary Lou sat up. Let me see how you look. Magnolia spun around in front of Mary Lou. You look good. Danka, Mary Lou. There's only one thing missing. Mary Lou jumped up, went to her bedroom, pulled out an atomizer from her dresser drawer, and hurried back to Magnolia. Before her cousin could say anything more, she was being spritzed with rose water. Magnolia backed away. Hey, what are you doing? Relax, it's just rose water. Dad said it's a sin to wear perfume or makeup. This is just rose water. God made roses, so how is it a sin to smell like a rose? I don't know. That's what Dad said. As Magnolia did her best to wipe off the rose water from her arms, Mary Lou sat the atomizer on the dresser in Magnolia's room. I'm only helping you. I know that, and if you don't want my help, you might as well go home. I do want your help, Mary Lou. I don't want to go home. There's nothing wrong with rose water. Didn't Mary pour perfumed oil on Jesus's feet or something? That was different. I don't see how. If you don't want any more of my rose water, I won't waste it on you. Good. Now stick by me at the wedding, and I'll introduce you to everybody I know. Danka, I can't wait. And don't be too friendly. Magnolia tipped her head to one side. What do you mean? Just be nice but not over-friendly, or they might think you're simple or something. Magnolia raised her eyebrows. I wouldn't want them to think that. I know, that would be terrible. You look nice, Mary Lou. Danka. Mary Lou smoothed down her pale yellow dress, and then adjusted her new organza prayer cap she'd sewn specially for the occasion. Your clothes are all beautifully made. That's because I made them and I like sewing, so I'm good at it. Would you teach me? I can sew, but I want to be as good as you. Okay. It pleased Mary Lou that her cousin wanted to be exactly like her. We're going now, Mary Lou. Are you sure you girls don't want to come with us? Mary Lou responded to her mother, Nay, Danka. We might stay on later, so it makes sense for us to go separately. Don't be too late coming home. And you must leave within the next 10 minutes, or you'll be late for the wedding. We'll be right behind you, Mom. As soon as she heard her mother and father's buggy heading down the driveway, she said, Come on, let's hitch the buggy. Shouldn't we have done it in our old clothes before we got dressed? We'll just take our capes and aprons off, and then if we get our dresses dirty, it won't matter. We'll put them back on and they'll cover the dirt, so it should be fine. Okay. You know so much, Mary Lou. I do, don't I? The two girls giggled. When Mary Lou led the horse out of the stall, Magnolia stared at it. Why are horses always brown or black? They're not. They're lots of colors. I'm talking about buggy horses. I want a white one. My husband can give me a white horse for our wedding day. A white horse would be romantic and a lovely thing to receive as a gift, don't you think, Mary Lou? Stop romanticizing and help me. As the two girls set about hitching the buggy, Magnolia chattered on. I thought I'd be married by now at my age. Your mother said something to my mother about the Fullers, and that's why my mother sent me here. It annoyed Mary Lou that her cousin talked non-stop about the Fullers and what her mother had said. Most things these days annoyed Mary Lou. Well, I've already told you about them. I remember. I'll see for myself when I get to the wedding. Mary Lou sighed. Okay, I'll point them out to you. Chapter 4. While Mary Lou and Magnolia drove along the road to the miller's house where the wedding was being held, Mary Lou decided to tell Magnolia a little bit about the Millers. I'm friends with all the Miller sisters. The oldest is Lucy, who married Levi, then the middle sister is marrying Joshua, and then there's Catherine, the youngest one. Is she married? Nay, she's still only young. How old is Jacob Fuller? It angered Mary Lou to talk about the Fullers again, especially when she'd already told her cousin Jacob was off limits. Around 22 or 23. Too young for you, Mary Lou. He's younger than me. I wouldn't say he's too young for me. Anyway, there's too much competition for him, like I already told you. What about the other Fuller boys? There's Samuel. He's very quiet and doesn't talk much. Then there's Timothy, who's on Rumspringa, and the youngest is Benjamin. He's only 16 or thereabouts. Timothy might be there today. Well, Benjamin is way too young for both of us. They drove a couple of miles in silence, while Mary Lou wondered what her mother had said about the Fullers. And why was she talking to her sister about the Fullers at all? Maybe Magnolia's mother asked if there were any suitable men at the community for her daughter. That had to be it. Can this horse go any faster? Magnolia was clearly agitated. We're not late if that's what you're worried about. Are you sure? The house is just up the road and around the corner. Magnolia straightened her prayer cap for the 10th time, and then pushed some loose strands of hair back under the front. Do I look all right, Mary Lou? You look lovely. Danka, so do you. When they rounded the corner, it wasn't hard to tell at which property there was a wedding. Rows of buggies were parked right down the length of the Miller's driveway. It looks like we are late, Magnolia said. Trust me, we're not. We'll have to park the buggy a long way away, and by the time we walk to the house we'll be late. Mary Lou remained silent, and then she had an idea. Why don't I take the buggy right up to the house, and you can get out? Then I'll go back and park the buggy. Ah, nay, I couldn't do that. I'll wait. I don't want to face a lot of strangers on my own. Strangers are only people that you haven't met yet. Nay, Mary Lou, don't make me do that. Okay. They secured the buggy at the end of the row, and hurried to the house. They made their way through the crowd outdoors, and inside the house it was almost as crowded. Mary Lou whispered to Magnolia that there were 2 seats in the row at the back. She pulled on Magnolia's sleeve and led her through to them. When everyone was seated, Mary Lou pointed out the Fuller boys and the Miller girls. Then Hazel and Isaac walked in with a young baby, and Mary Lou felt a pang through her heart. She had to stifle envious feelings that baby should have been hers. Isaac should have married her since he'd used up 2 years of her life. If she'd been available, there would have been other men she could have married. The news that Isaac and Hazel were having a baby felt someone was kicking her when she was already down. Mary Lou didn't want to be bitter, but she couldn't help it. She leaned in toward her cousin. That woman there with the baby in her arms is Hazel. Oh, she's so pretty. I can't wait to see the baby up close. I wonder if she'll let me hold it. And that man behind her, the tall one, he's Isaac. Magnolia stared at Isaac and then said, No wonder you're so upset. Mary Lou didn't know what her cousin meant by that, and neither did she dare to ask. Did she mean that she'd been dumped for a prettier woman, or did she say that because Isaac was so handsome? It could be either, neither, both, or something else entirely. Mary Lou took a deep breath in an effort to calm herself. She wanted to run out of the house screaming. Sometimes she wanted to move to a different community, far away from her past mistakes and history. Life would be a whole lot easier if she could be brave enough to do that. Adeline made her way downstairs in a traditional blue wedding dress, white cape, apron, and prayer cap. She looked lovely because she was so happy. She was glowing. For the first time, Mary Lou was genuinely happy for Adeline. Adeline was a lovely girl and deserved happiness. Maybe God gave a person happiness judged on their heart. If that was the case, Mary Lou figured she might never marry anyone. The bishop often preached about bitterness taking hold within a person. Mary Lou had tried to hide the bitterness over being dumped by Isaac by liking other men, but that had ended badly. Now she was at the 3rd Fuller son's wedding, alone except for her annoying cousin who wanted to marry a Fuller even though she didn't know them. Mary Lou followed the line of Magnolia's gaze directly to Jacob. That annoyed Mary Lou further. She'd already advised Magnolia she wouldn't have a hope of winning Jacob's heart. Why wasn't her cousin listening to her? And she could tell by the glint in her blue-green eyes that she wasn't. Then Magnolia looked at Adeline and said to Mary Lou, Sideline is not on the sidelines anymore. Magnolia laughed, and a woman sitting in front turned around and looked at them. When the woman had turned back around, Mary Lou whispered, Shish. Don't let anyone hear you say that. I won't, but you said it first. Mary Lou nodded, and regretted telling Magnolia that name. Then Mary Lou saw Hazel's mother sit down next to Hazel. Oh look. That's Hazel's mother. She rarely goes out anywhere. I'm surprised to see her. She hardly ever goes to the meetings. I'm surprised the bishop hasn't had stern words with her yet. She doesn't look very happy. That's because she's got mental problems. She should probably be locked up somewhere. Really? Mary Lou nodded, Most definitely. I don't think Hazel should allow her around her baby. Magnolia looked back over at Hazel and her mother, then whispered back, but she's the grandmother. Mary Lou shrugged her shoulders. Still, that's what I think. Hazel's taking a risk. When Adeline sat down, Magnolia said, Are you jealous of Adeline, Mary Lou? Of course not. I'm not jealous. Why would I be? It must be hard to watch your friends get married and you're so old and you're not married yet. Is that the way you feel, Magnolia? Sometimes it is. I guess I do feel like that in some small way, but I'm happy for my friends. I know you'd be happy for them, but there must be a part of you that isn't. Yeah, there is, but it's best not to dwell on those things. In life, Magnolia, you can't dwell on the bad things. You've got to fix your mind on the good and happy things. Okay, that's what I'll try to do. I just don't know why I'm not married yet. We can't whisper anymore now. The bishop is about to stand up and he'll see us. He doesn't like it when people talk while he's talking. Magnolia stopped her chatter, and Mary Lou was able to focus on the wedding. She never thought young Adeline would get married before her. It seemed so unfair. She shrugged off the thought so as not to be completely depressed. She had to abide by the advice she had just given to her cousin. When the wedding ceremony was over, all Mary Lou wanted to do was be first in the large undercover area where the food was being served, but she couldn't. She was trapped in the middle of the crowd. Who is that talking to Hazel's mother? Magnolia asked her. That's Adeline and Lucy's mother. They're best friends. Mrs. Miller took Hazel's mother under her wing when she moved here. That was good of her, seeing she's got all those problems. Shush, don't say that out too loud. I didn't. No one can hear us. Mary Lou knew that wasn't true because they were in the midst of a crowd. People had heard what she said. The wedding breakfast was held partly in the barn and partly in the makeshift undercover area. 4 large fires burned to keep everyone warm against the wintry feeling cold. I wonder if it's going to snow. It is probably a little too early for that, Mary Lou said. I didn't mean now, I meant in a few days. Who knows? It might. When Hazel comes out of the house, let's ask her if we can hold the baby. Mary Lou nodded. Okay. Have you even seen it up close yet? Yeah, last week, and I even got to hold him. More than anything, Mary Lou wanted her own family, babies and a husband to take care of. She'd be a good wife and mother if only someone would give her the chance. Maybe God had somebody better than Isaac for her. She hoped so. When Hazel sat down by the fire with her baby still in her arms, Mary Lou took Magnolia to see them. Hazel, this is my cousin Magnolia. She's come to stay for a while. Hello, Magnolia. Hi. Magnolia stared down at the baby. You have such a beautiful baby. Would you mind if I have a hold? Hazel giggled. Of course you can. He's asleep at the moment, but it's okay. Abe won't wake. He can sleep through anything. Just mind his head. I'm used to newborns. Magnolia took the baby into her arms. Abe is just delightful. Danka, we think so too. And does your mother live with you? Hazel nodded. She lives in the Grossdotty house attached to our place. Oh, that's good, but you must be worried about her with the baby and all. Mary Lou couldn't believe her ears. What was her cousin saying? Magnolia had to know not to say anything like that. I'm not sure what you mean, Hazel said. Mary Lou was telling me about your mother and all her problems. Hazel's eyes opened wide and she looked up at Mary Lou. Is that true, Mary Lou? Chapter 5. Mary Lou wanted the ground to open up and swallow her whole. She'd never been so embarrassed and ashamed in all her life. Tell her what you said, Mary Lou. Magnolia stared at Mary Lou. I said nothing. Mary Lou knew what she'd said was a fabrication, or at least an exaggeration, and she couldn't bring herself to repeat all the horrible things she'd said about her friend's mother. She knew the baby was in no danger from Hazel's mother. She just wanted something dramatic to talk to Magnolia about. You must have said something, Hazel said. Mary Lou laughed it off. Don't worry about it, it was nothing. As long as the baby is safe, Magnolia said. Of course he's safe, Hazel said, frowning at the 2 girls. Magnolia, I've got so many more people to introduce you to. Give the baby back now. Okay. Danka for letting me hold him, Hazel. Hazel smiled at her, and Mary Lou knew it wasn't a genuine smile, it was a forced smile. What Magnolia said had unnerved her. When they were some distance away, Mary Lou said, "What were you thinking saying that? Do you want me to be run out of the community?" "I wasn't saying anything that you didn't say." Mary Lou had no answer for that. She'd have to be more careful what she said in front of Magnolia. "Anyway, I exaggerated. The Bopley's beautiful." "He's all wrinkly," Magnolia said. "That's because he's so young." "Not all of them are like that. He must have been underweight." Mary Lou shook her head. "I don't think so." "So, who are you going to introduce me to?" Mary Lou looked around. "Let me see now." She laid eyes upon Julia Yoder, a woman known for talking so much people couldn't get away. She'd have Magnolia talk to her, and then she'd escape by herself somewhere to recover from what Magnolia had said to Hazel. Her plan worked. Once Julia's gums were flapping fast, Mary Lou slipped away. She didn't know where she was going, all she knew was she had to escape. Weddings were happy events for some people, but for people like her they weren't. Her stomach churned at the silly thing Magnolia had said to Hazel. When Magnolia went home, she'd have to do damage control with Hazel. Things had been strained between them at first, and they were just starting to get along. Her getaway was helped by her buggy being the last in the row and close to the road. 2 buggies were arriving just as she was leaving. It was good to be in the buggy alone. She'd barely had a moment to herself since her cousin arrived a couple of days ago. Since it was a Friday wedding, she thought it would be a good chance to have a wander along the market stalls, as most of the Amish people she knew were at the wedding. No one would know she had left, and then she could sneak back when it was about to end. Once she parked her buggy in the lot at the farmers' markets, she headed to the nearby diner on foot. They made the most delicious thick creamy chocolate shakes. She sat down in a booth near a window and ordered her shake. A favorite pastime of hers was to watch the people as they walked by and imagine what their lives were like. When a woman in her mid-60s walked slowly by with her shoulders hunched and a grim face, Mary Lou knew she didn't have a very good life. She guessed the woman was walking slowly because she didn't want to go home to an empty house. All her children had grown up and left and never contacted her. She was probably divorced since she wore no ring like most married Englishers did, and she probably didn't even have a pet. The next woman who walked by wore a tailored skirt suit. Even from a distance, Mary Lou could tell it was expensively made, and the woman was walking quickly like she had somewhere important to be. "There you go." Mary Lou looked up at the waitress. "Thank you." Then she pulled her shake closer as the waitress walked away. She sucked the creamy liquid through the straw, and carried on guessing about the lives of the passers-by. She was starting to feel a little better about her troubles when she looked up and saw an English girl and an Amish man together. They were walking side by side. When she looked harder, she saw it was Jacob Fuller. What? Why isn't he at the wedding? She was sure he'd been there when she'd left. This was too good an opportunity to miss. She left her shake on the table, walked out the door and hurried toward Jacob. When she was 5 paces away, she called out to him. "Jacob." He spun around and didn't look at all happy to see her. "Mary Lou. What are you doing here?" He glanced nervously at the girl, then looked back at her. Mary Lou folded her arms and lifted her chin. "I could ask you the very same thing, and it's worse you not being there since Joshua's your brother." Out of the corner of Mary Lou's eye, she saw the girl stare up at Jacob, as though she had no idea he was missing out on his brother's wedding. "Can we talk about this later, Mary Lou?" "We sure will." Again he glanced at the girl and then looked back at Mary Lou. "Stay right there please, Mary Lou. I'll be back in a minute." Placing her hands on her hips, Mary Lou said, "I'll wait for 30 seconds." He gave her a slight frown and then turned his attention back to his female friend. Mary Lou watched as he walked with the girl to a parked car. After she'd sat in the driver's seat, he stuck his head in the car talking to her for a few moments, and then he stepped back as the car drove away. Jacob strode back toward Mary Lou. "New girlfriend?" she asked, loving the drama. "Look, can we keep this just between ourselves?" "So I'm right? You have an Englisher girlfriend?" "Not exactly. Taylor's just a friend." He was acting like someone who'd been caught out. She probed further. A friend who would like to be your girlfriend then? His lips twitched and she stared at them. His lips were full and perfectly shaped for a man. She gave a mental headshake and brought her attention back to the subject at hand. There was no way she'd get carried away by another good-looking man, especially not one with the last name of Fuller. Could you please not mention this to anybody? It must be important if you don't want me to say anything. My private life is exactly what it is, my private life. I don't want anyone delving into it. Now she was offended. Well, I hope you don't mean me. I don't think you're that interesting that I would delve into your life. Nay, I'm sorry, Mary Lou, I didn't mean you would do that. I mean, if you mention it to someone might be picky, and I wouldn't want it to get back to my parents. Not at this stage anyway, not until I know what I'm doing. I've got half of a shake waiting for me back at the diner. Mary Lou hurried away. Why should she keep her mouth shut? Why should she do him any favors? Had he ever done her any? She was just a joke to the Fullers, so why should she do anything good for them? Besides, if he was up to something sneaky, why should she cover for him? She planted herself back down on the seat, glad that the waitress hadn't been quick enough to clear her table. Suddenly, Jacob sat himself in her booth on the seat opposite her. She looked up at him in surprise. What are you doing? He picked up a menu. I'm rather hungry suddenly. Chapter 6. Didn't you eat at the wedding? Oh wait, you weren't there. Maybe you were too busy kissing your friend to eat? Mary Lou smirked. Jacob leaned across the table toward her. Would you like to know? She leaned closer to intimidate him, but he did not move away. There was only about 3 inches between them. Nah, I wouldn't. The waitress came to the table and Jacob ordered a steak sandwich. When the waitress left, Mary Lou spoke her mind. I think it's rude the way you were staring at the waitress, ogling her. He smiled. I wasn't doing anything of the sort. He leaned closer. I was looking at her in an innocent kind of way. See how she's wearing sneakers and odd socks? Mary Lou glanced over at the waitress, who was taking an order at another table nearby. She wore a pink uniform with sneakers and was indeed wearing mismatched socks. They were pulled low, so as not to be so noticeable. Yeah, so what? And she's got dark circles under her eyes, so what does that tell you? It struck Mary Lou that he was a fellow people watcher. What does it tell you? He chuckled. I think she's a single parent. She wears no wedding ring, and most married Englishers do, and she's wearing minimal makeup. I'd say she's got a young child at home and her life is hectic. She had to take this job to make ends meet. The father is not taking responsibility for his child. My guess is she's left the child with her mother, who begrudgingly looks after it while the waitress works. Mary Lou stared at him before replying. Maybe she's studying, and last night she was up cramming for an exam. Exams are over at this time of year. Oh. Maybe she's looking after an aging parent, she said with a smile. She's not old enough. An aging grandparent? Not likely. Mary Lou had another look at the girl. You could be right. You'd better leave her a large tip then. Jacob chuckled again. I did notice her fingernails are awfully bitten down, like she's nervous or worried about something. You noticed that? He asked. I look at people the same way you do, apparently. Sometimes I'll sit here and watch people walking past and try to figure out what their lives are like. I call it people watching. He raised his eyebrows. We have something in common. Just one small thing. I wouldn't make a big deal out of it. Mary Lou sucked on her straw, and when she came to the end of the drink it made a loud noise. She kept the noise going just to annoy him. You about done? Yeah. I'm getting my money's worth. It's bad manners to make that sound, he said with a grin. So. Oh, you know that? Yeah, but I didn't think you would since you come from a family of boys. Mary Lou, we had a mother and a vater to teach us manners. Mary Lou thought she might have gone too far. I'm only teasing. He laughed. I certainly hope so. Several minutes later, the waitress placed Jacob's meal in front of him. Mary Lou stared at the size of it. As well as the steak sandwich, there were fries and a salad. I hope you don't think I'm going to wait while you eat all that. Nay, I don't expect you to do anything. But I do have something I want you to do. Would you do something for me, Mary Lou? What? Keep quiet about the girl you just saw. He took a hold of his sandwich and bit into it. I'll think about it. Then it struck Mary Lou that it wouldn't be fair if Jacob Fuller married a girl outside of the community. He needed to stay and marry one of their own. Have you met my cousin? Her name is Magnolia, and she was at the wedding today. When he'd swallowed, he said, I haven't met her. Is she anything like you? Not as good as me, but that's too hard for anybody to live up to. Jacob laughed. Is she as pretty as you? Mary Lou shrugged her shoulders. It's not for me to say. Maybe she is and maybe she isn't. Why are you telling me about her? Because I think the two of you might be a good match. Jacob shook his head. Forget it. There's no way. What? There is no way what? I just want to get to know the girl you just saw a little better. What's so good about Tinkerbell? I already told you she's just interesting. She's going to be a scientist. And the girls aren't interesting, if they're in the community? You're set on wanting an Englisher? I didn't say that. You're putting words into my mouth. What I want to ask is, will you be my cover? We'll pretend to date when really I'll be getting to know Taylor. I can't. That was what she was trying to avoid, humiliation. If people thought she was dating Jacob, it would be too embarrassing. Although not many people knew of her crushes on Levi and Joshua, but everyone knew Isaac had been courting her for 2 years, 2 whole years. Please. At least think about it, he asked. How do you suppose it would work if I agreed? What am I supposed to do while you're dating her? What do you mean? He took another bite. Do I have to spell it out to you? She asked. With his mouth full, he could only nod. It's like this. If you say you're picking me up after work and we're going out to dinner or for a buggy ride or whatever, when you sneak off to see Tinkerbell, what am I supposed to do? He swallowed. Anything you want. Wrong. Because someone might see me and know I'm not with you. So while you're with her, I've got to hide away somewhere and not be seen, because if people see me without you, they'll know I'm not with you. Do you get what I'm saying? Jacob rubbed his chin. I see what you mean. Finally, she said as she mentally rolled her eyes. Let me think about that for a moment, he said. It seems like this potential arrangement would be one-sided. What would I get out of it? When he hesitated, she added, You get all the advantages and I get nothing in return. You'd be doing a favor for a friend. I sympathize with you, but at the same time, my free time is valuable. I work long hours and when I come home I need to relax. How do you relax? I sew. His face lit up. What about a new sewing machine? Mary Lou's eyes opened wide. She had a treadle sewing machine which she enjoyed using, but she also could do with a gas-powered one. It would be faster for sewing straight long seams. Are you saying you'll buy me a sewing machine? If I was saying that, would you be prepared to do it? Depends. Mary Lou pouted. On what? I have a sewing machine, but I've wanted a different kind for some time. Can I have any machine I choose? Yeah, you can have the most expensive one around if you want. I might not need the most expensive one, but as long as it's the one that I choose, I'll be happy. Deal. He offered his hand to shake and she gladly shook it. I still don't know where I'm supposed to go or what I'm supposed to do when you're off gallivanting with Tinkerbell. That's not my problem, and her name's not Tinkerbell. She raised an eyebrow. Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Sailor. He shook her head. Her name's Taylor. That's a funny name for a girl, she said. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll call her Tinkerbell. He wiped his hands on a paper napkin. You know, she's not just some random girl I like the look of. There's a whole lot more to her than looks. Mary Lou raised her hand. Spare me the details. I really don't care as long as I get my sewing machine. He chuckled. I mean it, I'm not just saying it. She's a very intelligent girl and she's studying science. She's going to be a scientist. I already told you that, I guess. Wonderful. Mary Lou deliberately sounded as sarcastic as she possibly could. Anyway, thanks for doing this for me, Mary Lou. She raised a hand in the air. I hope you know what you're doing, that's all. That's why I'm taking things slowly, trying to sort things out, and you're helping me to do it. Hey, if this thing blows up in your face, don't bring my name into it. I won't because, well, I won't. Good. Oh, and while I'm pretending to be your girlfriend, I won't have to suffer through any of those dreadful family dinners, will I? I'll see that you don't. I'll make excuses why you can't go. It'll be hard though because my mother likes you. Yeah, mothers always like me. Anyway, that's your problem. And you can't blame her for liking me. Mary Lou walked away. Then she walked back and sat back down. There are prettier girls in the community, and so she studies science, so what? It makes for interesting and stimulating conversation, he replied. You're being ridiculous. Do your brothers know you like this girl? No one does, Mary Lou. That's why you must keep it a secret if you want that sewing machine. Mary Lou figured she had given it her best shot, on behalf of all the girls in the community. Okay, I'll do what you want, but don't forget it must be a sewing machine of my choosing. Mary Lou stood up again, and figured she'd better get back to the wedding before Magnolia told her parents she'd left her alone. Hey Mary Lou, where are you going? She swung around. Back to Adeline's house. Everybody will still be there, and no one will know I snuck away. That's exactly what I was thinking. If anyone notices we were both gone at the same time, they'll draw the conclusion that we were together. He gave her a wink. If you get my meaning. I'm not sure I do, but anyway, whatever. I'm going back now, and you can follow me or do whatever you like. What about tomorrow night, Saturday? What about it? Can we have a pretend date? Mary Lou sighed. I guess so. Danka. I'll collect you at 6. Mary Lou pulled a face, turned away from him and walked out of the diner. Jacob smiled and looked down at his half-eaten sandwich and took another bite. He loved Mary Lou's sassiness, but he wasn't going to let her know that he found her attractive, otherwise she might not do him any favors. This was just the kind of plan he'd been trying to think about, and it had landed in his lap. Looking out the window at Mary Lou flouncing away in the distance with her dress swishing about her, he gave a soft chuckle at the way she'd thrown his words back in his face. She reminded him of himself. Then it dawned on him that she was indeed the female version of himself. What could be more perfect? Chapter 7. As soon as Mary Lou got out of her buggy at the miller's house, her cousin rushed toward her looking flush-faced and flustered. Where have you been, Mary Lou? You left me alone, and I hardly know anyone. Stop pouting like that. You look like a spoiled child. I thought it would be better for you if I disappeared for a while, so you'd be forced to talk to people. Nay, stay with me, please. Where were you? I was off talking to Jacob Fuller, if you must know. Magnolia's eyes widened. Really? Yeah, I think we're going to start dating. Is that why you told me not to like him? Nay. Magnolia tipped her head to one side. Then why did you just tell me that? Mary Lou sighed. It would make things a lot easier if she told her cousin what was going on. All right, the truth is, and you have to keep this to yourself. When Magnolia had nodded vigorously, Mary Lou said, We're just pretending to date while Jacob visits an Englisher in secret to figure out whether he likes her or not. Why would you agree to do that? Because he's buying me a sewing machine. It'll be very embarrassing for me, because people will think this is the 4th Fuller boy I've liked. Mary Lou shrugged her shoulders. And that's the very thing I was trying to avoid, but who cares what people think as long as I get a new sewing machine? Mary Lou was pleased with herself and hoped her cousin would learn from her clever ways. Magnolia's eyebrows drew together. You said you had money saved, so wouldn't it be better to buy your own sewing machine? That way, you wouldn't be beholden to anyone. Mary Lou's jaw dropped open. Why would I spend my own money on something when I'm trying to save all my money? Magnolia shook her head. I don't like this. Why not? Mary Lou asked. What if a man likes you and is turned off when he sees you with another Fuller boy? And if Jacob likes this girl, what if he leaves the community? Everyone will feel sorry for you and pity you if Jacob leaves. They'll think he dumped you to be with her. Mary Lou bit her lip. She didn't know if she could live through everybody pitying her like that. She didn't want to think that way. It was too awful. You're looking at the negative side of things, Magnolia. If you keep thinking about bad things, then bad things will happen to you. But if you stay happy and positive like me, things will go well for you. Is that right? Mary Lou nodded. Absolutely. Okay, I'll only think good things from now on. Perfect. And I will ignore the way you opened your mouth to Hazel. What I said to you were my private thoughts. They weren't for broadcasting. I'm sorry, Mary Lou. I didn't mean to say anything I shouldn't have. Don't let it happen again. I won't. Good. Mary Lou was still annoyed with what was said. Perhaps Magnolia was nervous about meeting new people, and her mouth had run away with her. That had to be it. Unless Magnolia was deliberately trying to turn people against her. The next night, Magnolia helped Mary Lou get ready for her pretend date. Stop fussing. It doesn't really matter what I look like. It's not like it's a proper date. Mary Lou pulled away from Magnolia, who was straightening the back of her dress. Your parents don't know that it's not a real date, and they would expect you to look your best for when Jacob collects you. Mary Lou rolled her eyes. It's all bothersome. I wish I never agreed to do it. I agree you shouldn't have. Mary Lou didn't like the disapproval of her younger cousin. You might be right, but I've given my word, and I can't go back on that now. I don't see why you can't. Just tell Jacob you've reconsidered the whole thing. Nay. I said I'd do it, and I will do it. There's one thing about me that you might not know, and that is that I don't let people down. If I give my word about something, I carry it through even if it's not convenient for me. I have a certain code of ethics that I live by. I am a reliable person. That's good, Mary Lou. I can see your point of view. Just remember, I didn't have to tell you about this. I didn't need to. I only told you because I trust that you won't tell anybody. I won't tell anybody, Mary Lou, I won't. Good. Because I would be very disappointed if you did. Magnolia gave Mary Lou's dress a final brush down. You look lovely. Danka for helping. I feel bad leaving you alone tonight. Don't feel like that. I love talking to your folks. Do you? I do. They remind me so much of my own parents. Are you homesick? Nay, not yet. I've only been gone a couple of days. Being away from them is good practice for me for when I get married. How do you think your parents would feel if you marry someone from here? It's not that far away, there are more men here anyway. I think they'd be okay with that, and I'm quite prepared for it. That's good. It occurred to Mary Lou that she hadn't even talked to Magnolia about any of the men who might be prospects. She'd been too wound up in her own problems. Did you meet anyone you liked at the wedding? There's a man I like called Samuel. He's very quiet. Not Samuel Fuller? Yeah, that's him. Mom said I should marry a Fuller, remember? He's very shy, and you're right, he hardly talks to anyone. Did he talk to you? A little. Magnolia nodded. Mary Lou, Jacob's here, her mother's voice traveled up the stairs. That's strange, I didn't even hear him drive up. Magnolia whispered, and can you find out from Jacob if Samuel's interested in a girl? I want to know if I have a chance. I'll see what I can find out. Danka. Have a good night, Mary Lou. She rolled her eyes. It'll be boring, but as I said, I'm doing this because I've given my word. Magnolia nodded. I know. She gave her cousin a hug and hurried down the stairs. She didn't expect to see Jacob inside her house, but there he was, talking with her parents just inside the front door. Oh, Jacob, I didn't even hear you drive up. I'm a bit early. I hope you don't mind. That's okay. I was ready. She looked at her mother and father and noticed that their faces were beaming. It annoyed her that they were so obvious about their delight at her dating Jacob. Good night, everyone. Don't wait up. Put your cape on, Mary Lou, her mother said, grabbing the thick black cape and thrusting it into Mary Lou's hands. I wasn't going to forget it. She gave her mother half a smile as she took the cape into her arms, and then walked out the door in front of Jacob. Jacob closed the door behind them. Would you like some help putting that on? Nay, Danka. I'm perfectly capable of putting it on myself. She walked down the steps quickly, heading to the buggy, and he hurried after her. You look lovely, Mary Lou. Danka. In her heart she was still annoyed with Isaac for wasting so much of her time. It had been a bitter pill to swallow. She climbed up into the buggy, still seething about the way Jacob's older brother had treated her. He pointed the horse and buggy toward the road, and the horse clip-clopped away from the house. "Where are you taking me?" "I thought I'd take you to that diner we were at yesterday. I'll pay for your meal, of course." "As you should." He glanced over at her, and she gave him a little smile. "How long will you be?" she asked. "A couple of hours." "Will that be too long?" "When you say a couple, do you mean 2 or 3? Because I'm not going to sit there for 4 hours." "Nay, not 4. I think around 2. Will that be all right?" "I suppose so. Although I don't know what I'll do for 2 hours." "I really appreciate you doing this for me, Mary Lou." "Yeah, I'm a nice person. Too nice sometimes, and when you are too nice sometimes people take advantage of you." "I hope you don't think I'm doing that." "Nay, I don't think you are, because I'm getting that sewing machine." He chuckled. "We're quite alike, you know." "How so?" "I don't know, I just see a few similarities every now and again." "I don't want to be similar to a man." "Do you mean I'm not feminine, or something?" "You're very feminine and delicate, and all that." "That's not what I meant." "I hope not." She straightened her apron and smoothed it down, and then tied her prayer cap under her chin. "Are you cold?" "Not with this on." She pulled her cape further around her and covered the front of her dress. He looked over at her. "Why don't you do it up?" "Because then I'll be too hot." She glanced over at him. "You just worry about yourself." He looked straight ahead. "Fine, I'll do just that. And when you come back from your date tonight, you can tell me what you find so fascinating about this girl." "I've told you all I can." "While you're talking to her tonight, analyze what's so good about her so you can tell me. You really should be able to express yourself a little better. If you're going to these lengths to see her, you must be truly interested, and you need to know why you're considering leaving the community." "I'm not." "You must be," she said. "I don't think I'd leave the community for a woman." "Do you think she'll join us?" "You never know." Mary Lou looked over the darkened fields. It felt sinister, she thought, with the moon hiding behind the clouds. She shivered. "It's dark tonight." "Don't worry, I'll protect you." He gave a little chuckle. "I can look after myself." "I'm sure you can." When he pulled up at the diner, he turned to her. "Do you want me to come in with you for a moment?" "Nay, I'll be fine. Just don't leave me here too long." "No more than 2 hours, yeah." He gave her a nod. "Thanks again, Mary Lou." He reached under the buggy seat and pulled out some money and handed it to her. It was $50. "This is far too much." "Have dessert." "I'll have 2. She took the money, got out of the buggy and walked toward the diner. Chapter 8. For the sake of making everything realistic, Jacob arrived at the small Italian restaurant where he'd set up the pretend date. He was really meeting Timothy to discuss his problems. As soon as he walked in, he saw his younger brother near the back at the quiet table he'd reserved. "Did you talk to Taylor?" Timothy asked when Jacob sat down. "Yeah, I did, but I didn't get anywhere." Timothy rubbed his face. "I can't believe this. I can't believe it's happening to me." "Anyway, you're late," Timothy said. "I'm sorry. I had a few last-minute things I had to attend to." "How have you been?" He didn't want to tell him about Mary Lou and his plot to win her heart. Timothy was too worried about his own problems. The waiter interrupted them and gave them menus. When the waiter left, Timothy said, "I don't know how you think this is going to work out." Jacob said, "I thought I would be able to change her mind." "I'm sorry. I can't imagine how this is all going to play out to everyone's best advantage. It's just not. You just have to have faith." Timothy's body trembled. "I never should have gone on Rumspringa. You never should have done a lot of things, but you did. And now you must deal with the consequences." Timothy stared at him. "I don't need a lecture from you. I'm not giving you one. If I wanted you to be like this, I would have gone straight to Dad. I'm sorry, I'm trying to be supportive and help you out in all this." Timothy stood up. "No one can help me with this mess. See ya later. Wait. Timothy kept walking out of the restaurant. Jacob sat there wondering what to do. He'd done as much as he could think of to help him. It seemed an impossible situation. He sat there still longer in deep thought about his brother, and then all he wanted was to get back to Mary Lou. She was obnoxious, a little bit spoiled, not to mention short-tempered. A woman like that would keep him on his toes. Will your friend be returning? The waiter asked. No. He looked across at an empty glass. Timothy must have had a drink while he'd been waiting. I'll just have the bill, thanks. Certainly, sir. After Jacob paid, he shrugged off the uneasiness that he sensed looming over him like a storm cloud, and headed back to Mary Lou. Meanwhile, Mary Lou was in a world of her own after she'd finished a steak sandwich. She hadn't touched the fries or accompanying salad, so there would be room for dessert. She was halfway through her chocolate sundae when a rough-looking older man in dirty clothes sat himself opposite her. He looked like he hadn't had a decent meal in a while. I'm sorry, but I'm saving that seat for someone who's joining me soon. She noticed other tables were empty, so why was he sitting with her? He grumbled, They're not here yet though, are they? She didn't take it to be a question, it was more of a statement, so she didn't respond. She did her best to ignore him and stared down into her sundae. A few seconds later, she was relieved when the man moved to another table. On your own tonight, love. A male voice rang out from behind her. She turned around to see a middle-aged man wearing overalls covered in paint. He was in the booth directly behind her. No, I'm not alone. She turned back around and then she heard him again. Looks like you are. It must be something in the air tonight, she said under her breath. The man continued, If you're lonely, you can come sit with me. She turned around to face him again. I am not lonely. I am waiting for a friend. The man grinned widely. It looks like he stood you up. You've been sitting there a long time. Leave the girl alone, Graham. Mary Lou was grateful the waitress had come to her rescue. I'm only being friendly, he responded. Just leave her alone, would you? If I have to. When the waitress looked at Mary Lou mouthed, Thank you. The waitress gave her a smile and a nod before she went to take another order from the old man who'd tried to share Mary Lou's table. Mary Lou looked out the window hoping to see rescue in the form of Jacob's buggy coming up the road. She couldn't go through another night of this. She hoped Jacob would make up his mind about that woman sooner rather than later. While she waited, she tried out her people-watching skills on the old man. She figured he was lonely, that much was obvious. He probably lived with his mother, his aging mother. She most likely cooked for him, but tonight she was in the hospital having a procedure and was staying overnight. He had to fend for himself, so that's what he was doing out looking for company. As for the man in the painting overalls in the next booth, it wasn't too hard to work out what he did for a living. He had to be a regular here, seeing that the waitress knew his name. His marital status was most likely divorced. Mary Lou figured no woman could put up with a man like him if they didn't have to. His wife might have kicked him out for his flirting and philandering ways. Mary Lou smiled, pleased with herself for figuring all that out. Then she wondered what people thought of her sitting there by herself, an Amish woman alone in a diner. Maybe they thought she'd been shunned, and that's why she wasn't eating with her family. But did the English know about shunning? When she came to the end of her Sunday with nothing to do except sit there, it was even more awkward being there on her own. Are you sure you don't want some company? The painter asked again. Mary Lou saw that the waitress was on the other side of the room, putting 2 large plates down on the table. She was too far away to hear him and warn him off again. I said before, I'm fine, thank you. I love the way you speak. I'm fine, thank you, he mimicked her. What sort of an accent is that? I don't have an accent. It's you who has the accent. The man roared with laughter. Mary Lou didn't know what to do. She couldn't go outside. It was freezing out there and she'd catch her death of cold. She had to stay within the warmth of the diner until Jacob returned. You're a pretty girl, and you'd be a whole lot prettier if you dressed yourself in something else. You're covered from head to toe. At this point, Mary Lou knew it was best to remain silent and ignore him. Only a couple of seconds later she looked up, pleased and surprised to see Jacob. He slid into the booth. What are you doing back so soon? She asked. I didn't see you coming. I didn't want Taylor to get too much of a good thing. Always leave 'em wanting more. Mary Lou scoffed. I reckon the date didn't go so well. You were barely gone an hour. The date went well, thank you very much. I don't see how that's possible. He placed his hands on the table and looked down at them. Maybe I'm losing my touch with the ladies. She leaned forward. What do you mean? Maybe you're right and she's not interested in me. Mary Lou figured he was trying to confuse her. It was a game, or some kind of reverse psychology. She played along. She looked like she was yesterday. She's not gonna join the community, and in all reality I can't see myself leaving. Mary Lou was pleased to hear that information, if he was being serious. If you're both in love, something will work out. Do you think so? She nodded. I do. He rested his chin on the palm of his hand with his elbow on the table. You believe in love? Of course I do. That's a funny thing to say. It's not. What I meant to say is, do you think there's only one person for everybody, each person? She was distracted while the man in the painting overalls left, and Jacob noticed. I'm glad he's gone. He was trying to talk to me. Oh, I'm sorry. Forget it. He looked down at her empty plate. What did you order? I had the same as you had the other day, a steak sandwich, and then I had a chocolate sundae. He chuckled. I could do with one of them right now, the steak, not the sundae. It's far too cold for ice cream. He pretended to shiver. I thought you would have just had a meal. You know what those small gourmet meals are like. They wouldn't feed a pigeon. I suppose I can wait if you're really hungry. Would you? She nodded. He signaled for the waitress and gave his order. Tell me, Mary Lou, what do women want in a man? All we really want is someone who adores us and puts us first. Is that it? Basically. She nodded for emphasis. He chuckled. What's so funny? You mean, if the man is a dreadful person, a liar or a scoundrel, all he has to do is be considerate and adore you and you'll overlook the rest? Mary Lou glared at him. Of course not, she snapped. It's a given that the man must have all the good traits. That's what I'm asking you. What other traits? Oh, I didn't understand. Go on. She stared at him. If you want the honest truth. I don't want to hear a bunch of lies. Let me finish. He chuckled again. Okay, tell me what you're thinking. Most of the girls I know want a man who is solid and would never leave the community, and that's where you fall down. Hey, what do you mean? If I was interested in you, or if I had been interested in you, I wouldn't be anymore. Because you are attracted to that English girl, and that means you weren't solidly focusing your eyes on God. Her words ripped through his heart like a knife through butter on a summer's day. She was right. His plan was dumb, but now he had to keep it going. And? Surely you know all this, don't you? I don't have any sisters. I only have brothers. The waitress brought his steak sandwich. He looked up at her and smiled. Thank you. She was the same waitress they had talked about the other day. When she left, Mary Lou leaned across the table and whispered, She still has those dark circles under her eyes. Yeah, I noticed that. And if you're on a date with another girl, you can't be looking at waitresses. His jaw fell open. I'm people watching. Mary Lou giggled. I know that, but another girl mightn't know that, and she wouldn't be happy. I get where you're coming from. Good, now eat your steak, so I can have a bit of peace and quiet. Chapter 9. Jacob bit into the sandwich, pleased to just be with Mary Lou. When he finally finished eating, she folded her arms. Can we go now? Okay. He wondered how he might see her again soon. The next words fell out of his mouth before he thought them through. Levi has invited us for the evening meal on Tuesday night. She frowned at him. I said no dinners. You said, no awkward family dinners, and I believe they were your exact words. This is just with Lucy and Levi. It's not with my folks. I would feel awful if I left my cousin again so soon. Do you think they would mind if Magnolia joined us? I don't see that they'd mind an extra person. What about an extra two? You could invite Samuel, she asked. Ah, I see where you're going with this. I think it would be a good idea. Okay, good. Mary Lou was pleased that she'd be able to go home with good news for Magnolia. "Are you ready to go?" "We can sit for a little longer, can't we?" he asked. "I've been here long enough." Mary Lou stood, and Jacob had no choice but to stand too. "Okay, let's go." They headed to the buggy after Jacob left a tip for the waitress. "I really appreciate you doing this for me, Mary Lou." "You're welcome, but remember, I'm not doing it for nothing." He chuckled. "I know. What did you and your girlfriend talk about? I can't imagine what the two of you would say to one another. Now what sort of man would I be if I told you something like that?" Mary Lou giggled. "That's not fair. I want all the juicy details. That was part of the deal." "I can't remember that it was. Let me think a moment." "No. It wasn't." When Mary Lou arrived home and got out of the buggy, she realized she was in trouble. She liked Jacob, and she'd foolishly locked herself into seeing him again. It would be much easier to walk away and forget him, but now she had this stupid dinner at Levi's place. At least it would make her cousin happy to spend time with Samuel. When she opened the front door of her darkened house, her attention was drawn to a small light by the stairway. She picked it up and carried it up the stairs with her, and then set it down on her nightstand. When she had changed into her nightgown, she crept into Magnolia's room. "Magnolia, are you awake?" "Yeah. I am now. I thought you would have waited up for me." Magnolia sat up, rubbing her eyes. "I tried to, but I couldn't. I was too sleepy." "Did you find out anything about Samuel?" It wasn't the right time to ask him if Samuel liked someone. She sat down at the end of the bed. "Jacob went on the date and didn't stay long, and then he came back and had a steak sandwich with me." "That sounds a bit odd." "I thought so too. Sounds like he spent more time with you." "I don't know. Do you think Jacob likes you?" "Don't be ridiculous. He likes Taylor. Otherwise he wouldn't be doing all this and going to extremes to see her." "I just thought that." "Well, don't think." "I'm sorry, Mary Lou." Mary Lou felt bad that her cousin was always saying sorry to her. "I think I'm starting to like him, and I don't want to." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. I thought you might have an answer." "Me?" "Yeah. You're the one who knows everything, Mary Lou." Yeah, you're right. I do." She giggled quietly, and Magnolia joined in. "I just have to give it some thought and decide what to do about it. Meanwhile, we've been invited to Lucy and Levi's house for dinner on Tuesday night, and Samuel will be there too." Magnolia gasped. "Really? You mean it?" "Yeah. Oh, I can't wait. You should have told me that straight up. I must sew a new dress. Will you help me?" "I would, but I won't have time. Tomorrow's Sunday and we can't sew on Sunday, and then I have to work Monday and Tuesday." Yeah. "Mom will help you. She's a good sewer. She taught me to sew. I brought green material with me, enough to sew a dress." "Green?" Mary Lou pulled a face, wondering what shade of green. "It's lovely. It's not too bright and not too dark. It's like a dark leaf green." Mary Lou made no comment. She didn't care for green but could see that her cousin liked it. Chapter 10. Jacob drove home planning how things would work with Mary Lou. With Mary Lou's promise to be his cover, he'd be able to spend more time with her. He grinned when he recalled his clever plan of telling her about being invited to Levi and Lucy's house. The grin faded just as fast when he thought about talking Levi into it. The next day was Sunday and there was no meeting, as they were held every alternate Sunday and this was the off week. Hoping Levi and Lucy would agree about the dinner at mid-morning, he made his way to their house. Everything was icy and still that morning. Even the birds must have been huddled in their nests against the winter cold. The only sign of life was a rabbit that scampered in front of the horse, causing him to jerk his head and move slightly to one side. In the distance, Jacob saw the welcome sight of smoke spiraling out of the chimney of Levi's house. He longed to warm himself in front of the warm, crackling fire. When he got to the house, he jumped down from the buggy and hurried toward the porch. Lucy opened the door before he reached it. "Morning, Jacob." "Hi, Lucy." She stepped aside to let him in. "You must be freezing." "I am." He rubbed his hands together. "Would you like a hot drink?" I wouldn't mind one if you're having one. Hot tea? Sure. When Lucy disappeared into the kitchen, he joined his brother in the living room by the fire. What brings you out this way? Levi asked. I'm here to ask you for a favor. Levi grimaced. I'm not sure I like the sound of this. Jacob gave an embarrassed chuckle. I've invited some people to your place for dinner on Tuesday night. Levi leaned closer to him. You've what? I've kind of invited some people to your house for dinner on Tuesday night. This Tuesday? Yeah. Levi rubbed his bearded chin. Jacob pulled his mouth to one side. Are you busy that night? Nay. It should be all right. I'll just check with Lucy. Danka. I invited Samuel and Mary Lou's cousin as well as Mary Lou. Levi frowned and then gave a little chuckle. I think it's good that you're dating Mary Lou. You do? Yeah. Don't look so surprised. It was my understanding she caused some trouble. It was nothing. There's not one of us who hasn't made a mistake or two. And will Mary Lou have Christmas at Mom and Dad's house or with her parents? Most likely her parents, since she has her cousin staying there. Mom will want her to at least come for one meal of the day. Perhaps the evening meal. We'll see. Jacob knew that would be the last thing Mary Lou would want. I can tell you the best thing you can do is get married. Jacob nodded. I'm hoping to find it out for myself within the next year. That's my goal. That will make Mary Lou happy. That's the plan. He only hoped that the whole thing didn't backfire in his face. When Lucy came out with the tray of hot tea, Levi asked her how she felt about having people to dinner on Tuesday night. I'd like that, she responded. Good, because Jacob has already invited people for us. She giggled as she looked at Jacob. What have you done, Jacob? Invited Mary Lou, her cousin, and Samuel. He shook his head. I don't know what came over me to invite them here without asking you first. No harm done, she said. We were talking just yesterday about having people over for dinner. We were, and Jacob has kindly saved us the trouble of deciding who to invite, Levi said. He and Lucy looked at each other and started laughing. Jacob felt a bit embarrassed but soon joined in. Then Lucy poured the tea from the teapot and passed them each a cup. Chapter 11. On Sunday, Mary Lou slept in until 12 in an effort to avoid spending time with Magnolia. When she finally went down to the kitchen, Magnolia was there alone sitting at the table eating. Where are Mom and Dad? Mary Lou asked. They've gone to your father's brooder's place. They invited me to go with them, but I want to spend time with you. I'm so happy you're awake now. Did you have a good sleep? Yeah, it was fine. Mary Lou filled up the tea kettle and placed it on the gas stove. Then she leaned over the kitchen sink and looked out the window. It's such a gloomy gray day. I love days like this. Can I fix you some breakfast? Nay, Danka. I'll do it. I'm not very hungry first thing in the morning. It's lunchtime now. That's how long you've slept for. I was tired. With her parents gone, she would have to spend the rest of the day entertaining Magnolia. It would have been a whole lot easier if Magnolia had gone visiting with her parents. If you don't mind me saying, you don't do many chores. Everything is left up to your mother. Mary Lou stood up straight and stared at her cousin. What about you? You left your mother home alone with a bunch of boys. With you gone, she'll have to do everything. She said she didn't mind, and how else could I find a husband? There are only 2 single men there, and neither of them is suitable for me. That's why I'm here, Mary Lou, and you know that. Stop being so rude to me. You should respect your elders. Didn't your parents teach you that? Yeah, but I just noticed that you don't even do anything when you come home or before you go to work. Tell me one chore that you do. Your mother does all the cooking, all the washing up, all the cleaning and everything else. She likes to do it. I used to do most of the chores before I left to come here because Mom said it was good practice for me. Mary Lou figured Magnolia's mother was very clever in saying that. I don't want to talk about it. This is how our household works best. When I get married, I'll do what I have to do. Besides, I do all the family sewing, and that means Mom doesn't have to do any. The kettle whistled, and Mary Lou turned away from Magnolia to make her much-needed morning coffee. "What shall we do today, Mary Lou?" "I'll give it some thought while I'm drinking my coffee." She sat down at the table opposite Magnolia and spooned in 2 heaped teaspoons of sugar. When she noticed Magnolia staring at her, she looked up and said, "What? That sure is a lot of sugar." "I'm not finished yet." Just to be obtuse, Mary Lou spooned in another 2 teaspoons. She regretted that decision when she brought the coffee to her lips and took a sip. "Ah, that tastes so good. It must be awfully sweet. Just the way I like it." She placed the mug back down on the table. "I've never known anybody to have 4 teaspoons of sugar in their coffee. I've cut back, I used to have 6. Of course that wasn't true, but she didn't like the attitude her cousin was developing. "Well, today, I was thinking we might go and visit the Fullers." Mary Lou was horrified. "Hey, we can't do that." "Why not?" "It's just not a good thing to do." "But everyone thinks you and Jacob are dating. And we're not, so that's why it would be a big mistake to put myself under such scrutiny by going to their house." She shook her head. "Mrs. Fuller is not an easy woman to get along with." "Don't you like her?" "I love her. We became so close when I was dating Isaac." Mary Lou frowned. Her cousin had made her think about Isaac again. "It's just that I really want to see Samuel again soon." "You'll see him on Tuesday night. Just relax." "I can't wait." "You'll have to." Mary Lou stood up and got herself some cereal. All the Sunday meals were easy ones, as nothing that resembled work was permitted on a Sunday. The Amish observed it as a day of rest. When she sat back down, Magnolia sighed loudly. "I'm bored. If we can't go visiting, what can we do?" "I didn't say we couldn't visit anyone, I just said we couldn't visit the Fullers." Mary Lou breathed out heavily. She would much rather stay home and do nothing, preferably by herself, but since her cousin was there, it was her duty to keep her entertained. "We'll go visiting, if that'll make you happy." Magnolia's face lit up. "That would be wonderful. I'll get dressed right now." Magnolia leapt up from the table and rushed out of the kitchen. Since her cousin was already dressed, she was obviously going to get better dressed to impress somebody. Mary Lou ran through her mind all the options of people they could visit. She didn't want to go anywhere near the Fullers, or anywhere they might be. That ruled out Lucy's place and Hazel's place. She'd take her cousin to visit her other friends. When her first 2 choices of friends weren't home, Mary Lou made her way to Katie Yoder's house. They knocked on the door, and Katie's mother told them that Katie was down with the flu. Not liking the sound of that, Mary Lou said a quick but polite goodbye to Mrs. Yoder, and beat a hasty retreat to prevent catching any germs. "This is terrible, Mary Lou. Everyone is either not home or sick. What will we do now?" "Go home and have a nap." "Hey, I want to do something." "You slept more than half the day already." "I know, but I have to go to work tomorrow and I just wanted to rest up today." "What about me? I haven't been out very much since I've been here. Your mother never goes anywhere, and you're always at work, so I just have to stay home all day every day." From what her cousin said, and the self-focused way she said it, Mary Lou guessed that Magnolia wouldn't last more than a few weeks before deciding to go back to her parents' house. "We're going out to dinner on Tuesday night." "I know, and that's good, but I want to go somewhere today." "Where?" "I've tried everybody I know." "Not everybody," Magnolia said with a sly smile. "I told you, I'm not going to the Fullers." Magnolia pouted. "What about Hazel?" "I think I've said enough to Hazel to last quite a few months. And I don't think she'll be looking forward to seeing either of us again anytime soon after the things you said." "I just repeated what you said." "That's the whole problem." Mary Lou shook her head, regretting that she'd confided in her cousin. The words had been careless words that had spilled out of her mouth without thinking. Without thought that if they were repeated they would hurt people. That was one lesson she had learned. "Do you want to have a look around at the farmer's market?" "Food." "It's more than just food, they have a lot of other things there too. And maybe we could have something to eat in one of the cafes." Magnolia clapped her hands together. "Could we?" Mary Lou giggled. "Okay." She remembered that's where she'd first seen Tinkerbell and Jacob together, not far from the markets. She sent up a silent prayer that she wouldn't run into any of the Fullers or Tinker Bell. The rest of the day passed without incident, and Magnolia was satisfied with filling her face with cake at the coffee shop. Chapter 12. On Monday evening, Mary Lou arrived home from work to see fabric pieces and scraps covering the kitchen table. Magnolia was sitting on one of the chairs with needle in hand, sewing a dress. "You're home already?" "I'm always home around this time of day when I'm on the late shift. The cafe closes at 4 and then we've got the cleaning up." Her mother was busy at the stove. "Magnolia and I have been having a lovely day sewing. Her dress is nearly finished. Look at it." Magnolia stuck the needle in the dress to keep her place and stood up holding the dress against her. It was almost down to her ankles and it was way too big. That was the reason Mary Lou did all the family sewing. It wasn't a good idea that Magnolia had allowed Mary Lou's mother to help her with it. Mom was skilled at sewing but not at proper sizing. The dress was totally unflattering. Magnolia looked so pleased with it that Mary Lou didn't have the heart to tell her it was awful. "Wonderful, and you think it will be ready for tomorrow night?" "Yeah." Mary Lou stepped closer and had a better look. "Do you think it's too long?" "A little. You could cut about 4 or even 6 inches off the length, couldn't you?" "Yeah, I thought it was too long," Magnolia said. "Why don't you try it on after dinner and we'll see how it looks?" "You'll help me?" Mary Lou nodded. "I will, but after dinner. I'm starving right now. Dinner will be ready in 15 minutes. You girls can set the table." Mary Lou helped Magnolia move the dress and the fabric scraps off the table. Jacob had been on Mary Lou's mind all day at work, so having Magnolia's dress to think about was a welcome distraction. She would fix the dress the best she could. It had to be practically remade, and with the dinner outing scheduled for the next night there wasn't time enough for that. As Mary Lou and Magnolia rode in the buggy to the Tuesday night meal at Lucy and Levi's house, Mary Lou shared some insights with her younger cousin. "I did some foolish things. I'm only telling you so you don't fall into the same trap. I haven't been a nice person sometimes in my life. I'm doing my best to change. Now that I'm older, I think of other people more. I think it's because I've come to consider the reality that I might never marry, and now I'm calmer than I once was." "You think I'm desperate?" Magnolia asked. "Is that why you're saying all of this?" "A little, if I'm truthful." Magnolia opened her mouth in shock. "You act like it. I'm not being mean, I'm trying to help you." "It doesn't sound like it," Magnolia said. "I can't help that. I'm saying these things for your own good. I haven't been the best person and I'm trying to change." "Yeah, but you'd only be saying that if you don't think I'm a good person. Is that what you think?" "Hey. Everyone can learn things from other people. God sent you to stay with us for a reason. I'm just sharing my knowledge with you. I thought that you would be grateful." Magnolia sighed loudly. "I've tried my best to get along with you, Mary Lou." Mary Lou remained silent. Perhaps she herself had a lot more things to learn, and maybe even things to learn from her younger cousin. She'd already learned one thing, to be more careful with what she said about others. The rest of the trip was spent in silence. When they arrived at the house, they could tell by Jacob and Samuel's buggies that they were the last to arrive. Had they come separately because Samuel was hoping to drive Magnolia home? It was definitely a good sign that the two men had come separately, seeing that they lived in the same house. Levi opened the door to them, and standing behind him were Jacob and Samuel. Both men had made an effort to dress well. After greeting everyone, the two girls helped Lucy in the kitchen. When they sat down at the long wooden dinner table, which was in a separate room beside the kitchen, Mary Lou was pleased that Jacob was seated directly opposite. Next to him was Magnolia, and on the other side of Magnolia was Samuel. "I hope everyone likes pork chops." Lucy placed the platter of meat alongside separate bowls of green beans, mashed potatoes, freshly made applesauce with cinnamon and sauerkraut. All agreed that they liked pork chops. "Everything smells delicious, Lucy," Mary Lou said. "I hope it tastes it." Everyone closed their eyes and said a silent prayer of thanks for the food before they helped themselves, passing the platter and the serving bowls to one another. "Can I get anything for you, Jacob?" Magnolia asked. "I'm fine. I can reach everything." Can I get anything for you? Nay. She giggled. Mary Lou eyed her suspiciously. If she didn't know better, she'd think that Magnolia was flirting with Jacob, but she had already told Magnolia not to bother. Many girls had tried to win Jacob's heart and they had all failed. Magnolia should have been talking to Samuel. That's why she'd gotten Samuel invited. Magnolia, why don't you tell Samuel about the kind of horse you want? Everyone looked at Magnolia. I don't know what you're talking about, Mary Lou. Now everyone looked at Mary Lou. The other day, Magnolia said she wanted a white horse and was wondering why most buggy horses were brown or black. Thankfully, Samuel took over the conversation. I used to wonder that myself, Magnolia. A lot of our buggy horses are standard breds. I know that, but why aren't they white or light gray or cream with white mane and tail? He chuckled. They just aren't. Well, that's what I want. I want to have a white buggy horse. I don't think I've ever seen one, said Levi. Neither have I, Jacob agreed. I'll find one day, Magnolia said. These chops are delicious, Lucy, Levi said. Danka. That's good. She's getting a lot better at cooking, Levi told everyone. What? I thought I was pretty good to start with, Lucy said with deliberately exaggerated surprise, which made everybody giggle. You were. I'm only teasing. How long are you staying for, Magnolia? Samuel asked. I might stay for a while. A few months, I think. Mary Lou said, Magnolia is thinking of moving here permanently. Samuel smiled. That would be good. Everyone stared at Samuel. It was most unlike him to talk so much. Magnolia turned to Jacob. And what do you think, Jacob? It seemed Jacob hadn't been listening. About the chops? Nay, about me staying for a few months. Are you happy about that? As long as you are. Jacob looked over at Lucy. I agree with Levi about the food. It's very good. I'm glad it's passable. Now no more talk about the food, or everybody will think they need to offer an opinion. Magnolia giggled. I was just about to say how good it was too. Now you don't need to, Mary Lou said. It had become obvious by now that Magnolia was flirting with Jacob, even though Jacob didn't seem to notice. When the dinner was over, Mary Lou and Magnolia helped Lucy clear away the dishes, while the men went to the living room. Magnolia and Lucy took serving dishes to the kitchen, while Mary Lou stayed at the table, stacking the plates into easy-to-carry piles. When Mary Lou heard hushed voices in the kitchen, she hovered outside the door to hear what they were saying. She even told me she thinks Hazel's mother will harm the baby. Mary Lou heard Lucy gasp and she nearly dropped all the plates in her hands. Magnolia continued, It's true. And she told me this dress was a good color, and her mother told me it was more of an old lady shade of green. Can you believe it? I spent so much time sewing it. Now it's a waste of money. Really? Mary Lou said all that? Yeah, she did, and she's been very mean to me and I feel like going home. That surprises me. I can't believe what she said about Hazel's mother. Neither could I. Anyway, what she said about the dress is dreadful. Probably not as dreadful as what she said about Hazel's mother, but it's still dreadful. I'll tell you more later. I think she might be trying to sabotage me, and she told me that Jacob would never be interested in me, but he seemed to like me tonight, don't you think? I don't think Mary Lou would do that, though. Are you sure you're not mistaken? Lucy asked. There's no mistake about it. I didn't believe it at first, but then all these little things kept happening that only confirmed what she's doing. Mary Lou was frozen to the spot and couldn't believe her ears. She'd trusted Magnolia. Then she heard Lucy say, She said something similar to me once, but I was sure she'd changed. What? Magnolia asked. What did she say? Then it struck Mary Lou that in the recent past she had been conniving and mean to Hazel and to Lucy, and most likely also to Adeline. The three of them couldn't help it if the Fuller brothers liked them and not her. And who would like her if she was so mean and awful? Tears came to Mary Lou's eyes, and she hurried to her coat, swung it around her shoulders and headed out the front door. She closed it softly behind her, hoping no one would know she'd gone. They'd eventually notice she wasn't there, but hopefully she'd be most of the way home by then, if not all the way home. Magnolia could drive the buggy home. She ran with frozen icy tears sticking to her face. The air was so cold it felt as though it was freezing as it traveled down her windpipe into her lungs. Mary Lou, stop. Wait. It was Jacob. She ran harder until the muscles in her legs hurt. He caught up with her and pulled on her arm. Please stop. What are you doing? She tried to catch her breath. Going home. You'll catch your death in this weather. She turned to leave, but he swung her around to face him. What's upset you? She wiped her face with the sides of her coat, and then he brushed the icy tears from the fabric with his fingertips. What's wrong? Everything. Was it the dinner? It wasn't that bad. I admit Lucy's probably got room for improvement. She giggled, even though she didn't want to. That's an awful thing to say. It is. So if it wasn't the meal, what is it? She didn't want to tell him anything. She should never have told her cousin so many intimate details about her life, and should never have shared gossip with her. Nothing. Let's go back then. I don't want to. I can't. What shall I say to Lucy? She'll worry it was her cooking. Mary Lou smiled. Nay, she won't. Come back with me. He offered his hand and she shook her head. I'm embarrassed now that I've run out. I'm too embarrassed. She looked back in the direction of the house. It was hidden by a curtain of dark trees. Nay, they'll just think we went outside to have a quiet moment by ourselves. Isn't that a good thing for two people in love? Mary Lou giggled again. Okay, I'll go back. It's funny now that you're covering for me. He grinned. That's right, and I'm not even getting a sewing machine for it. You could share mine. With an emphatic head shake he said, Nay, Denka. Come on. He offered his hand and this time she took it. Hand in hand they made their way back to Lucy and Levi's house in the biting cold. Did someone say something to upset you? Maybe. I'd rather not say. Was it your cousin? She looked at him and didn't want to say. It was, wasn't it? I felt the tension between the two of you as soon as you walked into the house. I heard her talking to Lucy, telling complete untruths about me. I can see why you'd be upset, he said. Mary Lou nodded and sniffed, and then her attention was taken by how good and warm her hand felt wrapped in Jacob's. When they reached the house, he let go of her hand. Just ignore the problems, he advised. Is that what you do? Ignore the problems and then they go away? That's right. That's how men handle things. Women are far too emotional and hold grudges for too long. Firstly, we men generally have it out to clear the air and then we're fine. Maybe I'll try to do that. It sounds better than asking her about what she said. Mind you, I don't think I'll ever feel the same about her. I was trying to help her the same as I'd help a sister, and she just threw it back in my face. It's quite unbelievable. Come on. Smile before we go in. He stepped closer to her and she flashed him a smile. That's better. Stay like that tonight. Maybe your cousin has a lot of growing up to do. Yeah, maybe that's it. Danka, Jacob. You're a good friend. I'm happy with that for the moment. He leaned in and whispered in her ear, It's nice to see your softer side. Tingles rippled through Mary Lou's body when she felt his warm breath tickle her skin. She wondered what he meant by being happy with that for the moment. Didn't he like Tinker Bell? Jacob pushed the door open. When she walked in and saw Samuel, Levi, and Lucy's faces, she knew they thought she and Jacob were having a quiet moment alone, just like Jacob had said. Then she looked at Magnolia, who looked as innocent as ever. Mary Lou was thankful she'd overheard her and gotten an inkling of the true Magnolia. No wonder her mother packed her off to stay with me. Before he left to go home that night, Jacob pulled her aside into the area where they'd eaten. There is a matter of Christmas dinner. What do you mean? My mother will want you to spend part of Christmas Day with us. Nay, I don't think I can. Surely you don't expect me to? I don't expect you to do anything, but I was hoping you would. She shook her head. I said no family dinners, and Christmas Day would be like that, but 10 times worse. It's too much to ask. Is it? She nodded. When are you seeing Tinker Bell again? I'm not sure. Is it over? Over before it even began? She giggled. I'm seeing her soon, so I'll let you know when, if that's still all right. Sure, But do us both a favor and make up your mind about her before Christmas, would you? I'll try. Mary Lou felt Magnolia glaring at her and whispered to Jacob, "Actually, it might be a blessing to get out of the house when you go on another date. Don't be too hard on Magnolia." "I'm not. If I was being hard, I'd call her mother and tell her exactly what she's been saying about me. Sometimes these things have a way of working themselves out over time. I'll keep that in mind. Danke." Chapter 13. At home after the dinner, Mary Lou had every intention of keeping quiet and not confronting Magnolia, but she couldn't keep quiet. When she confirmed her parents were asleep, she spoke to Magnolia before they went upstairs to bed. "Did you have a good night?" "I did. I'm rather tired now." "Tired from flirting with Jacob all night?" Magnolia stared at her. Gone now was the sweet innocent face, replaced by the true face of a desperate 24-year-old woman. "What do you care? You're not even dating him for real. You said you liked Samuel, and yet you hardly talked to him all night. He was trying to talk to you. He was making a real effort, and that's difficult for him. I like him, but I like Jacob too. You said I couldn't get Jacob. That's the only reason I turned my attention to Samuel. I heard what you said to Lucy when you two were in the kitchen." Confusion spread over her cousin's face. "What did I say?" "You were talking about that dress you're wearing. Making out that I forced you to wear a dowdy dress. Now you say it's dowdy, after I've worn it to make a good impression. It's not dowdy since I fixed it. If I hadn't done that, it would have been. Anyway, that's not the point. You were speaking behind my back about me and I don't like it. And it wasn't true what you said. You've been bossing me around since I got here, and I don't like it. So there." Mary Lou was surprised by how much Magnolia's demeanor had changed. "I have not been bossing you around. You have to. And I heard what you said that I said about Hazel's mom. You said it though. You said those very words, that she might harm the baby." It had been a silly thing to say, and Mary Lou deeply regretted those words. Magnolia wasn't finished. "And as soon as you noticed that I liked Jacob, you called him outside and you were gone for ages. What was all that about? Just forget it." "Hey. I want to know. Let's be honest with each other. Or have you forgotten what it's like to be honest?" "Magnolia, that's a terrible thing to say. And keep your voice down." "Yeah, it is a terrible thing to say. What you're doing is wrong, pretending to be dating Jacob while he's off sinning with an Englisher." "Nay, he's not sinning." "And how would you know?" "He probably is. They were having dinner together. That's all they were doing. How can you believe that if he's making you lie for him? And in God's sight, it's probably just as much a sin. If you think Jacob is such a terrible person, why were you flirting with him?" "I'm off to bed." Magnolia turned on her heel and stomped up the steps. Mary Lou sat down on the couch and cried. She'd thought she had a real friend in Magnolia, and now she had an enemy living under the same roof. She couldn't tell her mother how awful her cousin had been, and that meant she'd have to put up with Magnolia for longer. The whole thing was just awful, and the coming months would be uncomfortable. To make things worse, Christmas was not far away. It was shaping up to be the worst Christmas ever. Mary Lou took all the available shifts at work, and did as much overtime as she could to avoid being around her cousin. She even worked on Saturday, so she wouldn't have to stay home with Magnolia. On Sunday, rather than take a separate buggy to the meeting as they'd previously done, Mary Lou and Magnolia traveled in the buggy with Mary Lou's parents. Mary Lou knew her mother had no idea the two girls weren't happy with one another. Hazel walked in holding her baby and glanced toward the back in Mary Lou's direction, and then quickly looked away. Things were strained between them now thanks to Magnolia's big mouth. Just as quickly as she blamed Magnolia, she realized the blame lay solely with her own big mouth. If she hadn't said those horrible things, Magnolia couldn't have repeated them. She knew that she would have to apologize to Hazel and ask her forgiveness. After the service, Mary Lou wasted no time in finding Hazel. "Hazel, can I talk to you?" "Yeah." Her baby was asleep in her arms. "Over there so no one can hear us." They both headed away from the crowd, and then Mary Lou turned to face Hazel. "I need to apologize to you. I've been an awful friend over the time you've been here. You haven't. You're just a little highly strung and there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone's different. Mary Lou looked into Hazel's green eyes and wished she could be as sweet and kind. I've been mean and horrible, that's what I've been, and I'm sorry for everything I've done and the dreadful things I said about your mother being mad and possibly harming Abe. It was truly dreadful. You don't need to. Will you accept my apology, Hazel? Hazel stared at her for a moment, as though she didn't want to admit that Mary Lou's behavior had been awful. Yeah, of course I forgive you. Mary Lou felt a weight off her shoulders. Danka, that is a relief. Now can I have a hold of Abe? Hazel giggled and handed the sleeping baby over. We'll always be good friends, Mary Lou. Danka, Hazel. Mary Lou made up her mind to try very hard to be as nice as Hazel. During the meal after the meeting, Jacob found Mary Lou. Mary Lou, will you do me another massive favor tomorrow night? You want to see Tinkerbell tomorrow night? He chuckled and then turned serious as he said, I really wish you wouldn't call her Tinkerbell. Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Sailor. He raised both hands. All right. I don't like rhymes. I think that's the only one I know. And I only know that little bit of it. Good. Anyway, tomorrow's not too soon, is it? I haven't seen her for days. Mary Lou nodded. Okay. Am I going to have to wait at the diner again? Does that suit you? I suppose it saves shivering somewhere in the cold. Danka, Mary Lou, you're the best. I know. What time will you call for me? Is 6 o'clock okay? That'll be fine. I suppose I have to go through some pain for that sewing machine. That's right, just keep thinking about that sewing machine. She glanced over and saw Magnolia doing her best to engage Samuel in conversation. Maybe Magnolia did like Samuel more than Jacob. Either way, it didn't seem like Jacob was the slightest bit interested in Magnolia, and that pleased Mary Lou greatly. As Mary Lou was getting ready in her bedroom on Monday night, there was a knock on her door. Yeah. Can I come in? Magnolia asked. Okay. Magnolia stepped in the door and closed it behind her. Just remember you're helping him to sin. That's rubbish, and please don't reveal Jacob's secret like you repeated everything else I said. What are you talking about? You told Lucy I said I thought Hazel's mother was going to hurt the baby, and you told Lucy you thought I was sabotaging you because of your dress. You heard all that? Yeah, I did. You should not be listening in. It doesn't matter. I was just about to walk into Lucy's kitchen with a stack of dishes when I heard you. I was so shocked I couldn't move. Just don't you tell anybody about Jacob. That's my secret, okay? I won't. Good, because it's not only my secret, it's Jacob's. I just want to warn you that you're enabling him to sin. I told you it's nothing like that. He's just going out to dinner or something, and I can't see him leaving the community over some girl he hardly knows. He just needs time to sort out his head. Has he been baptized? Yeah, he has. Well, that makes what he's doing doubly worse. Her cousin's warnings made her feel uneasy about helping Jacob, but it was too late to back out now that she was committed. I'm sure things will be fine. I hope so. Is that all? Mary Lou asked. Can we be friends again? I'd like to be, but I don't know if I can trust you. You've said some really horrible things. Yeah, and they came right out of your mouth. Magnolia nearly shouted. Mary Lou sighed. She was right. I didn't really mean them. I thought you would understand that. Magnolia shrugged. Maybe I took things the wrong way. Yeah, you did. Well, can we be friends again? It's been awful with you working all the time. I get so bored. Why don't you apply for jobs? Yeah, I thought about it. Samuel said that Hazel is only working a few hours a week now with the baby and everything. They need someone to take over her job. She's a bookkeeper. You know nothing about bookkeeping. I could learn it. I could do a course, or Hazel could teach me. I'm very good at math. Mary Lou didn't like the sound of that at all. I don't think that would be a good idea. Why not? I don't know, I just don't. If you do a bad job, it will reflect badly on my family. It took me a long time to get along with Mrs. Fuller, and Mrs. Fuller has nothing to do with the business. Mr. Fuller is practically retired, and Isaac mostly runs the business now. And how did you find all this out? I just said Samuel told me. He wants me to talk to Isaac about the job. You won't get the job, so don't embarrass yourself or Isaac by trying out for it. I heard Hazel's an excellent professional bookkeeper, and if you try out for the job you'll only make a fool of yourself. Magnolia stared at her stony-faced. I'll leave you alone to get ready. Magnolia walked out the door. Mary Lou could see she'd upset her. Maybe she was being too harsh. On the other hand, there was no way the Fullers would employ a girl with zero experience when they'd been used to having everything done perfectly and precisely by Hazel. It was a ridiculous notion. It was better that Magnolia be upset by her than be rejected by Isaac Fuller when she asked for the job. Mary Lou sat down on her bed, pulled on her black boots and laced them. She wished that Magnolia had never come to stay. Hopefully she would go home soon. As she was straightening her cap, she glanced at the clock on the nightstand and saw it was a couple of minutes before 6. Once she had pushed a few strands of hair away from her face, she made her way downstairs to wait for Jacob. Her father placed his Amish newspaper in his lap and looked up. Going out again? I haven't been out for about a week. He chuckled. Perhaps we should have Jacob over for dinner one night. Maybe. Maybe after Christmas. Everything's so hectic at work leading up to Christmas. Whatever you think. Just have a word with Mom when you'd like to have him over. It makes no difference to me. Dinka Dad. She knew what she needed was a nice easygoing man like her father, who agreed to everything. Then she heard buggy wheels crunching on the pebbles of the driveway, and the clip-clop of the buggy horse. That'll be him now. She grabbed her cape. Good night, Dad. Have a good night. Then she called out, Good night, everyone. She walked out the door as both her mother and Magnolia said goodbye from the kitchen. She hurried toward the buggy, carrying her cape. Hello, Jacob said before he'd even stopped the buggy. She looked up at him. Hello. Is anything wrong? Why? She climbed in the buggy. You looked flustered the way you were almost running toward the buggy. I'm fine, truly. Are you ready for another lovely night at the diner? Jacob moved his horse onward. Mary Lou rolled her eyes. I hope no one talks to me this time. Just tell them your older brother will be joining you soon. Mary Lou laughed. I'm older than you. I don't think you'll pass for my older brother. By the time they figure that out, I'll already be there sitting with you and they won't say anything to me. And they won't say anything to you while I'm there. That's true, I guess. So is it true love with Tinkerbell? He looked over at her. That's what I'm trying to figure out. You're going to a lot of bother for her. Maybe she'll be worth it, he said. I hope so for your sake, but I don't think anybody would be worth leaving the community for. That's something I'll have to figure out in my own time. He was right, and Mary Lou didn't say anything further. She'd promised to be his cover, so she had to grin and bear it. Where are you going tonight? She asked. The Golden Dragon restaurant. It's Chinese food. When they stopped outside the diner, she hurried inside, pleased that her usual booth was unoccupied. She sat down and looked out the window to see Jacob's buggy moving away. What can I get for you today? The same young waitress asked her. Just a toasted cheese sandwich and... She was about to say a chocolate sundae or a chocolate shake, but it was far too cold for either of those. And a hot chocolate, please. Sure. Would you like marshmallows with it? Yeah, please. That sounds delicious. She nodded. It is. When the waitress walked away, Mary Lou realized she should have brought something with her to do. Maybe some sewing, although it would look rather odd to be sitting in the booth and sewing like she didn't have a home. Chapter 14. Magnolia's words regarding Jacob played on Mary Lou's mind. What if Jacob was up to no good, and she really was enabling him? She rushed over to the waitress. Can you hold my order for half an hour or so? Okay. And would you be able to call me a taxi? Sure. Mary Lou didn't have too long to wait before the taxi arrived. She slid into the back seat and then leaned forward to talk to the driver. Do you know where the Golden Dragon restaurant is? It's not far. Take me there, please. A few miles later, the taxi slowed. There it is, on the corner there. Will here be okay? Mary Lou looked around for Jacob's horse and buggy, and couldn't see it anywhere. Can we do a lap around the block? Okay. After a drive around the block, there was still no sign of a horse and buggy. Can we drive around again and perhaps go down some side streets? He looked over his shoulder. Do you mind if I ask what we're doing? I'm spying on a friend. He said he was going to that restaurant, but I can't see that he's parked anywhere. Could he have meant a different restaurant? He said it was the Golden Dragon. Do you want me to call the restaurant and see if your boyfriend's got a booking? Mary Lou could feel her cheeks burning. The driver thought she was checking up on her boyfriend. It's nothing like that. Just take me back to the diner where you picked me up from, please? Okay. The driver did a U-turn and headed back toward the diner. No, wait. Can you go back to the restaurant and let me out and then wait for me? You're the boss. It's your nickel. He slowed down and did another U-turn. Mary Lou took a deep breath as she was about to walk into the restaurant. She quickly walked in through the large double doors and stepped onto the plush red carpet. After a quick look over the restaurant, she was fuming that she couldn't see Jacob anywhere. Neither could she see Tinker Bell. She hurried back to the waiting taxi and slipped into the back seat. Take me back to the diner, please. She was pleased the man didn't comment, but he didn't need to. She knew what he was thinking. The next few minutes went too quickly as she wondered whether she should have the driver take her home. Then she realized that was silly. As she paid the driver, she hoped she'd have enough left over for food. She walked back in and asked the waitress to change her order. There was only enough money for the hot chocolate. Back to her booth she went. From her seat she had a good view of the street. When Jacob arrived, she would find out exactly what was going on. When Jacob got back to the diner, he saw Mary Lou come out. She walked over to him before he got out of the buggy. Judging by her hands-on-hips stance, she was angry with him. Why aren't you waiting in the diner? It's too cold out here. Where were you? He jumped down. You know where I was. Nay, I don't know where you were. I know where you said you'd be. You're lying to me. I went there, to the restaurant, in a taxi, and you weren't there, and neither was Tinker Bell. He took his hat off, and then ran a hand through his hair and cast his gaze downward. She stepped closer. Jacob Fuller, why would you lie to me? His stomach churned. He had no option but to tell the truth, even though that was the very last thing he wanted to do. I just wanted to spend time with you, Mary Lou. She threw her hands in the air. Tell me the truth. What's going on, Jacob? It's true. Just what I said. I kept the pretense going because I wanted to see you, and I didn't think you'd go out with me if I asked. That's the truth. So you make up some big lie? Nay, it wasn't like that. Did it end badly with her? Is that why you came back so quickly that first time? Nay, it wasn't like that. The truth is, you lied to me. I know it sounds bad now when you say like that, but I had no evil intentions. She was too cranky for him to tell her the whole truth right now. He would in time if he ever got the chance. It's easy to say things now that she doesn't want you anymore. Well, I'm not going to be your backup woman. His eyebrows scrunched together. What are you talking about? Just take me home. She got into the buggy. I'm sorry, Mary Lou. I didn't want it to be like this. I just wanted to spend time with you. You already said that. You don't need to say it twice. He clicked his horse onward. From her silence the rest of the way home, he figured she didn't feel the same about him as he felt about her. His confidence was out the window. When he pulled up at her house after a stone-silent drive, he turned to say something, but he wasn't quick enough. She'd already jumped out of the buggy and was halfway to the house. He waited until she got inside, and he'd heard the door slam shut before he headed home. Chapter 15. At first, Mary Lou wondered if he had been teasing about wanting to spend time with her, but then she wasn't certain. Either way, it wouldn't end well, much like his relationship with Tinker Bell. For a start, she was older than Jacob, and there was also the problem that he was a Fuller. It would never work. She couldn't tell her parents, or even Magnolia, what had happened. She'd let Magnolia think she was still pretending to date Jacob. It was an embarrassing thing. Magnolia had advised her against covering for him, but then again, Magnolia could have had another reason for not wanting her to have anything to do with Jacob since she'd spent the whole of that Tuesday evening flirting with him. As soon as Mary Lou got inside the safety of her home, she was glad to see that no one was about. She hurried up the stairs, ran into her bedroom and pushed the bedroom door shut, taking a few shaky steps as her legs gave way beneath her and she collapsed onto the bed. Did Jacob really like her, or was he laughing at her behind her back? If she couldn't trust her own cousin, how could she trust Jacob? Another Christmas was about to pass, and she was still alone. She didn't want to start crying because it would be too hard to stop. Through the pain in her heart, she cried out to God, asking him to bring her a man who was best suited to her. He didn't have to be a perfect man, he didn't have to be handsome, he just had to love her. God wanted people to marry, Mary Lou knew that. She was comfortable she was asking according to his will. If love was meant to happen, it would happen without her having to force things as she'd done in the past. She shut her eyes tightly and counted all the things she'd done wrong, and in the quietness of her room, unburdened her heart to God and asked for forgiveness. If she truly wanted a good man, she would have to be a good woman. To do that, she'd have to begin at home, with her cousin. Even though her cousin was trying to stir up trouble, she'd have to forgive her and be nice, even show her loving kindness. Mary Lou bit her lip knowing it wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary if she wanted her life to take a better path. She wouldn't allow herself to like Jacob though, even if he liked her. It was a ridiculous thing for her to like another Fuller boy. When Jacob got home, he wanted to talk things over with someone, and was pleased to find Samuel in the kitchen fixing himself a snack. They were the only two awake. Jacob warmed up to talking about his problems. "You seemed to get along well with Magnolia at dinner the other night." "She seems okay, but she was talking to you most of the night." "That's only because you don't say much," Jacob said. "I find it hard to talk when I'm around girls. I don't really know what to say. Magnolia and I had a better talk on Sunday. It's easy to talk to girls. When they ask you a question, they aren't looking for a yes or no answer." Samuel nodded. "I know. I'm just hopeless." "You're not hopeless," Jacob replied. "Words just fly right out of my head. I can't think what to say. How are you so confident?" Jacob would have normally joked that it was his good looks and charisma, but tonight he didn't feel like laughing. "It's just practice, I guess. Force yourself to talk to them, and you'll gradually feel more at ease." "Danka. I'll do that. Maybe we should have more dinners like the other night. When Adeline and Joshua come home, maybe that'll be a good excuse for another dinner invite. Adeline's sure to have friends your age." "Yeah, she does. What happened tonight? Everything go okay?" Jacob leaned back in his chair. "I've made a big mess of things, that's what happened." The other night Mary Lou didn't look so happy when she left Lucy's house with her cousin. Was that because Magnolia was talking to you all night? Did Mary Lou get a bit jealous? It's not how it appears. He kept quiet about Timothy's secret, but told Samuel the whole thing about his plot to spend time with Mary Lou, and about her thinking she was covering for him. "Do you mean to say Mary Lou doesn't know how you feel about her?" "I told her, eventually, but she was mad with me by then. I should have been honest at the start." Samuel's dark eyebrows drew together. "And she's not interested?" "I don't know. I thought she liked me at one point, but now I'm not so certain. She thinks I only like her now because the pretend woman I wasn't even seeing rejected me." He shook his head. "She said something about not being the backup woman. Then she jumped out of the buggy when I took her home, before I could say anything more. I couldn't run after her because her parents were probably asleep." Jacob sighed. "You'll have to talk to her and straighten things out." "I know that, but I'm concerned I'll make an even bigger mess." "Keep talking to her until she understands." Jacob nodded. "Maybe. You know where she works, yeah?" "She works in a cafe." "Go see her tomorrow. I'll cover for you." Jacob laughed. "I don't need you to cover for me. I don't think I'll ever have anyone cover for me ever again. I'll go during my lunchtime so I don't miss any work." "Good. What if she doesn't like me?" Jacob asked. "All the girls like you." That's exactly what Jacob used to think. "She's a little older than me. What if she thinks I'm too young for her?" You must convince her that it's not a large enough age gap to make a difference. If she insists it's a problem, there's nothing much you can do. You can't change your age. Can you keep this talk just between us? I don't want anybody to know about this thing between Mary Lou and me not being real. I'll keep quiet, but it's coming up to Christmas. Mom will expect to see Mary Lou on Christmas Day. For at least part of the day. I'll win Mary Lou over, but I'll have to do it fast. He hoped that Mary Lou would forgive him for lying about the Englisher. It was only so he could see more of her, didn't she understand that? Chapter 16. Jacob was waiting for Mary Lou when she finished work. She walked out the back door of the cafe and saw him leaning against his buggy. What are you doing? Waiting for you. I need to explain things. She held up her hand. Let's just forget about everything. She walked away and he hurried after her. Suddenly she swung around. It was an immature thing to do. I'm sorry I ever agreed to it. It's all my fault. I still owe you a sewing machine. Forget it. You don't owe me a sewing machine or anything else. That was part of the deal. She grimaced. I'm finished with the deal, Jacob. I just want to forget it ever happened. She hurried to her buggy, and he was left standing there staring after her. The next morning at Mary Lou's house. Will you invite Jacob for dinner? Mary Lou's mother asked as Mary Lou made her morning coffee. Maybe soon. I'm going out tonight. By the look on her mother's face, she assumed that Mary Lou was going out with Jacob. Her mother smiled. Oh, good. She'd go back to the diner by herself just to have a quiet time to think about things. She could no longer do that in her own home, since Magnolia was always hovering about. It was unsettling having an enemy under her own roof, but she was working hard at being kind to her cousin. Magnolia's a little concerned that you haven't been spending much time with her. I try, Mom, I really do. I know. That's what I told her. It's hard with you working almost every day and then having a new boyfriend too. Mary Lou leaned in and whispered, when is she going home? She was talking about leaving soon, but I think I managed to talk her out of it. Mary Lou reached for a mug in the kitchen cabinet and remained silent. Suddenly, Magnolia appeared in the kitchen. Are you going out again tonight, Mary Lou? That's right. Mary Lou hoped Magnolia hadn't heard what they were saying about her. That night, while Mary Lou sat at the diner and pondered her situation, Magnolia took herself to the Fullers' residence. Samuel answered the door, and then brought her into the kitchen where his mother and Jacob were. Mrs. Fuller was busy with dinner preparations, while Jacob was just about to ask his mother for some womanly advice to help him with Mary Lou. This is a surprise. Is Mary Lou with you? Mrs. Fuller asked Magnolia. Mary Lou is going out. She glanced at Jacob. Anyway, I'm here to say goodbye because I'm leaving tomorrow. So soon? Samuel asked as they both sat down at the table with Jacob. Yeah. I didn't know how long I was staying, but I feel it's time to go home now. Samuel frowned. Can't you stay longer? Yeah, we can do with more girls in the community, Mrs. Fuller said. Especially girls like Mary Lou or who are related to Mary Lou. Mrs. Fuller's face beamed and Jacob could see how much she liked Mary Lou. Can you stay for dinner, Magnolia? I can't, but Denka. My aunt and uncle expect me back for the last dinner at their house. Oh, of course they would. Why don't all of you go into the living room and I'll bring you all some hot tea? Under any other circumstances, Jacob would have left Samuel alone with Magnolia, but since she was going back home, it was unlikely anything would happen between the two of them. He needed to find out what Mary Lou was thinking. When the three of them were seated in the living room, Magnolia asked, Where are all the other brothers? Benjamin is upstairs somewhere and Timothy's on Rumspringa. There's only the three of us boys who live here now, Samuel said. Oh, that's right. There are 7 of you and 3 are married. Mary Lou told me that one of your brothers was on Rumspringa. Samuel left the room to help his mother. And how is Mary Lou? Jacob asked, pleased that the conversation had come around to Mary Lou without his prompting. She's been plotting. What do you mean by plotting? Jacob asked. She leaned forward. She's only putting on an act that she doesn't like you. She's so upset you're She looked around to make certain they were alone. She's so upset you're seeing that girl, but she won't say so. I don't know why she's agreed to going out with you tonight as well. Tonight? Yeah. She's already left, shouldn't you be leaving soon? Soon. Jacob was amazed. Where was Mary Lou going tonight? Anyway, it's none of my business. I'm just surprised Mary Lou agreed to cover for you. I shouldn't have involved her. It was my mistake. Jacob knew then that Magnolia hadn't been fully updated by her cousin. Would you like me to drive you to the bus stop, or wherever you need to go tomorrow? Samuel blurted out as he came back into the room. I would love that, Denka. I need to leave tomorrow at 8 in the morning. I'm going to the local bus stop in town and then on from there. I'll pick you up before 8 and take you there, Samuel said. Do you know where Mary Lou is tonight? Jacob asked. She shrugged her shoulders. Isn't she meeting you? He was so preoccupied he'd forgotten he'd more or less told Magnolia that. Yeah, that's right. I'm leaving now. As fast as he could, Jacob hitched his buggy. The only thing he could think of was she might be at that same diner. It was a long shot. He drove to the diner and looked in the windows as he drove past, but she was nowhere to be seen. After driving around town for a while, he went home disappointed. Chapter 17. Mary Lou came home from the diner, feeling she had gotten her head straightened out. She changed into her nightdress, brushed out her long hair and quickly slipped between the chilly sheets. She jumped out of bed and pulled on 2 pairs of socks to keep her feet warm. Before she got back between the covers, her door opened a crack and a shaft of light beamed through the door. Who's there? Magnolia stepped into the room. It's just me. Can I come in? Sure. Mary Lou stayed sitting on the bed. Magnolia sat down next to her. I just came to tell you that I'm leaving in the morning. That was the best news Mary Lou had heard in some time. So soon? You've only been here 2 weeks. Yeah, you've been too busy to spend any time with me. I'm sorry, but you don't have to leave. I'll try and make some time. It'll be easier from now on. It's too late. Samuel is driving me to the bus stop tomorrow. Samuel? When did you see him? I saw him at his house before dinner. I took your mother's buggy. Was Jacob there? Yeah, and we had a nice chat. In her heart, Mary Lou knew that Magnolia had said something, made some kind of trouble. Did you speak with Jacob? He was there. Did you say? I can't remember if I said something or not. Why? Forget it. I don't know when you turned so mean. I should tell everyone about the sham with you and Jacob. Keep your voice down, Magnolia. In the dim lighting, she saw Magnolia pout before she sprang to her feet and walked out of the room. She left the door ajar, and Mary Lou had to get off the bed to close it. Magnolia left the next day, and Mary Lou felt as though she had her life back again. It was a week before Christmas when Mary Lou saw Jacob at the Sunday meeting. Since Christmas Eve was the next allocated meeting, the bishop had changed the meeting to the Sunday before. During the meal afterward, Jacob sought Mary Lou out. I know what you're up to, Mary Lou. What am I up to? Your cousin told me you were trapping me, laying a trap by appearing not to be interested in me. Mary Lou instantly saw red. Do you think every single girl in the world has to be interested in you? Nay, but of all the conceited, narrow-minded. Mary Lou reminded herself of the new leaf she was trying to turn. At least I know now that something was said. I just knew Magnolia said something to you before she left. Mary Lou turned and walked away from him. Jacob took his hat off his head and ran his fingers through his hair. Everyone still thought they were dating, and it would be convenient if they could be a couple for real. He strode after Mary Lou. Mary Lou, wait. I'm sorry. She turned around to face him. The word says to forgive. I forgive you, but really it was a stupid thing we both did, and now we must confess all and ask forgiveness from everyone. He gulped. For what? Deceiving everyone by pretending to be in a relationship when we weren't. That meant people would find out he was using Mary Lou as cover for him seeing an Englisher, but he really wasn't. He was even pretending to do that. Eventually Mary Lou would find that out. He tried to tell her, but she wouldn't allow him to speak. How would she take it when she learned the truth? He sighed. I guess you're right. You'd do that? She asked. I would, but I don't want to. She shook her head. Me either. We wouldn't have to if you'd date me for real. He grinned at her. Then he saw Mary Lou's face go sour. You're unbelievable. She stomped away from him. He stared after her. It seemed he couldn't do or say anything right. There was no use going after her. The only thing he could do was set things right. Jacob found the bishop talking to a group of people. He waited until the group dispersed and then stepped up to him. Can I have a quick word with you, Bishop John? Yeah. Right now? Jacob nodded. He didn't want things to drag out. Let's sit off to the side. The bishop pointed to some unoccupied chairs at the edge of the barn. Once they were seated, Jacob confessed all. Bishop John listened patiently and finally said, It's good you told me. Do I have to confess my deception to the community? Nay. You can apologize to your family and Mary Lou's. That will be sufficient. They were the only ones affected. I will. I'm so embarrassed. I can tell you that much. The bishop put a hand on his shoulder. Nothing ever stays hidden. That which is hidden shall come to light. Jacob nodded. I know that now. Mary Lou's furious with me. The bishop raised his bushy eyebrows slightly. You said she agreed. Yeah, but she changed her mind somewhere along the way. She agreed to help me, but she still doesn't know that there was no Englisher ever. Mary Lou saw me talking to a girl, and then the idea to spend time with Mary Lou hatched inside me. The bishop rubbed his beard. Maybe the feelings are mutual. Nay, I'm sure she's lost all respect for me. Respect can be won back. Can it? Yeah. But it may take some time. I don't think Mary Lou would be so upset if she didn't care about you. Pray on it. I will. I'll talk to Mary Lou's parents and ask if I can see them and Mary Lou tomorrow night. Then I will tell my family the truth after I make my confession to Mary Lou and her family. Good. The bishop smiled and gave him a nod. Jacob felt a lot better for telling him about everything, even his crush on Mary Lou. He found Mary Lou's parents and asked if he could see them tomorrow night along with Mary Lou. Chapter 18. Once Jacob was sitting in Mary Lou's living room with 3 sets of eyes on him, he lunged into his apology. I trapped Mary Lou into spending time with me by pretending to date an Englisher. I asked her to cover for me. Mary Lou's mouth opened wide. Pretending? Did you say you were pretending? What's this all about? Mary Lou's father asked. You're not dating Jacob? Her mother stared at Mary Lou. Jacob barely registered what Mary Lou's parents said as he answered Mary Lou's question. Yeah. I never actually dated that girl you saw me with. I barely even know her. She's a friend of Timothy's. You deceived me twice? Her father leaned forward. He's here tonight to make his confession. That's what he said. You lied to me, Jacob. I thought you'd be pleased I never dated an Englisher. You're the one I like, Mary Lou. I didn't think you'd go out with me if I asked you directly. He was being honest now and laying his feelings out for everyone to hear. It wasn't easy, and tonight would decide whether he'd be accepted or rejected by her. I can't believe you. I just can't believe you. She narrowed her eyes at him. Her mother said, And Mary Lou, you were helping him to date an Englisher after he's already been baptized. Mary Lou jumped to her feet. Nay. I'm not going to be the one who ends up getting the blame for this. I was just doing a favor for a friend. I didn't realize I was being trapped into something dreadful. It didn't start out like that, Jacob said. I didn't know how else to get your attention so I could spend time with you. It was a spur-of-the-moment thing, and I didn't think it through. You were acting on impulse, Mary Lou's father said. You're a young man. Maturity brings temperance, and that's something you need to learn. Jacob looked down at the floor knowing her father was right. It had been a dumb thing to do, and he did need to think before speaking. And do you also have an apology, Mary Lou? Her father asked. Yeah, I'm sorry I ever heard the name Jacob Fuller. She turned around, hurried to the stairs and took them 2 at a time. The moment she was inside her bedroom, she whirled around and slammed the door behind her, causing the house to shake. Mary Lou threw herself on the bed. Jacob was the fourth Fuller to make a fool out of her. Even though he said he liked her, she would never like him because of what he'd done. Jacob wasn't mature like his older brothers. He was an immature little fool. Tears of disappointment poured down Mary Lou's face. A few minutes later, she was glad to hear Jacob's buggy leave. She stayed in her room the rest of the night. Jacob had hoped his confession would have fostered positive feelings toward him in Mary Lou's heart. But that hadn't happened. The bishop had said respect would take time, he would have to wait. Now he had to face his parents and tell them. He knew they would be bitterly disappointed. His 3 older brothers had married lovely girls and hadn't given their parents grief. The truth would be a blow for his mother, because she particularly liked Mary Lou. When he pulled up to the house, he saw an old white car, Timothy's. This wasn't looking good. He hurried inside even before he unhitched the buggy. As soon as he opened the door, he felt the tension. He knew Timothy had told them. His mother was huddled in a corner of one of the couches, crying, and his father was sitting beside her trying his best to comfort her. Timothy paced up and down, running a hand through his hair, and Benjamin was sitting on the other couch looking amused. Samuel was next to him wearing a grim expression. "What's going on?" His question only made his mother cry harder. Jacob looked at Timothy. "Timothy." "I just told them," Timothy said. Samuel jumped up from the couch. "Timothy got an English girl pregnant. She won't marry him, and she won't come to the community." Jacob looked at Timothy. Samuel added, "Timothy was just about to come back to the community and now he can't." "I've got obligations now," Timothy said. "I've made a mess of things." Benjamin said to Jacob, "Where were you?" "Mary Lou's. I have a confession to make too." His mother and father looked up at him, and his mother stopped crying. "What is it?" she asked. "Mary Lou and I weren't really dating. I talked her into pretending to date me while I snuck off to date an Englisher, but there wasn't really any other girl. I was just tricking Mary Lou into spending time with me. She thought she was doing me a favor. I confessed all to the bishop on Sunday and to her and her parents just now." Her mother held her head and wailed, "God is punishing me. What have I done to deserve sons like these?" She sobbed, and his father turned his back on him. "I guess this makes me the favorite son now," Benjamin, the youngest son, said. "I haven't done anything wrong," Samuel pointed out. "Not yet, but you probably will. There's little doubt." Benjamin chuckled. Their father turned around. "Benjamin, stop this cheeky talk. There's no humor in any of this. You and Samuel go to your rooms." Benjamin jumped to his feet. "It's not fair. We're banished when we haven't done anything wrong." Samuel grabbed him by the arm. "Come on." Both boys went up the stairs. "I'm sorry, Mom. As I said, I've just been over to talk to Mary Lou and her folks. I don't care about that now. Your brother is having a child out of wedlock to an English girl. I don't know why this is happening to me." His mother sobbed into her hands. Jacob pulled Timothy aside. "What's going to happen? Have you talked to Taylor lately?" "She won't see me. Danka for talking to her for me the other day. That was the last time I saw her. I hope it wasn't anything I said." Timothy shook his head. "Hey. I'm sorry, it didn't do any good. Do you need money or something?" Timothy shrugged his shoulders. "I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe." "Are you in love with her?" "Yes. I still want to come back to the community, but I don't see how I can now." "You might be able to come back in time, maybe after the baby's born or something." He slapped him on the back. "A child is coming into the world, and that has to be a happy thing." Timothy gave a sad smile and his eyes glistened. "I know it should be a happy thing, but the circumstances aren't great. Everything's out of my control. If I had any say at all, Taylor would marry me. What complicated lives we lead. We must remember that God is in control, and He can work miracles." "I'm so upset." Jacob nodded and was glad he wasn't in Timothy's shoes. He couldn't imagine having a child in his situation. He stopped feeling sorry for himself. "I'll be here to give you all the help I can, whether it's money or whatever else you need. I feel I've ruined my life and Mam's. She'll come around. She might not be able to live with the shame. And what if Taylor doesn't let me or any of our family see the child? You don't know that's going to happen. Just wait and see. God works on people's hearts. I'll help you pray for a good outcome. Danka. I don't like seeing Mom so upset like this. She'll recover. I'll go soon. I'll have a quick word with Mom and Dad and then be on my way. Keep in touch, won't you? Timothy nodded. I better go and unhitch the buggy. Jacob left Timothy alone with their parents. Chapter 19. Mary Lou had taken all night to think things through, at the expense of a night's sleep. Once she calmed down, she realized confessing all and being vulnerable hadn't been an easy thing for Jacob to do. She wanted to thank Jacob and apologize for being so awful to him. That day after work, Mary Lou waited until the Fuller boys came out of the factory. She saw Samuel tap Jacob on the shoulder and point to her. Jacob made his way to her. Hello, Mary Lou. Mary Lou didn't like being so pleased to see him, and she did her best not to let him know. I just wanted to thank you for last night. Telling your parents was a whole lot easier than telling my parents. He chuckled. Why, didn't they take it well? They had just learned some shocking news before I got there. What? He looked around about him. The boys were in the buggy waiting for him. I came with my brothers today. You could drive me home and then we can talk. Sure. She was far too curious to say no. He called out and told his brothers what was happening, and they headed off without him. When he climbed up into the buggy, she said, It's nothing too awful, is it? You'll find out sooner or later, so I might as well tell you. Can you keep it to yourself just for the moment? She nodded. Of course. I'm good at keeping secrets. I kept yours for long enough, didn't I? You did. Timothy has gotten an Englisher pregnant. Mary Lou gasped and covered her mouth. That's dreadful. I know. It was actually that girl you saw me talking with. Timothy asked me to talk with her because she wasn't listening to him. He wants to marry her and do the right thing. He loves her. Tinkerbell. Yeah. That's crazy. Tell me about it. Mam's distraught. She'll be in bed for a week now. I'm so sorry. Let me get this straight, you weren't really dating a girl, any girl? I said that last night. He chuckled. It was a dumb idea, but I didn't think you'd give me the time of day considering. Probably not. I'm older, and I'm trying to get away from the men in your family. He nodded. I understand how you feel. I feel sorry for Timothy. Taylor comes from a very wealthy family, and that might have something to do with why she won't marry him. She might think Timothy's not good enough for her. Timothy thinks he's ruined his life and our mother's life. People can come back from things like that. I left the community and was shunned for a while, if you remember. He nodded. It seems so long ago now. It wasn't that long ago. I didn't like it at the time, but it was for my own good. Timothy must feel dreadful at the moment. He does. He doesn't know what to do. And he's worried that she won't allow our family into the baby's life. We must pray that everything works out well. A baby coming into the world should be a happy time. That's exactly what I told him. See? We're quite alike. I told you that before. Mary Lou gave a little giggle. I'm trying to repair my ways and make myself a better person, she said. I'm sorry I dragged you into my deception. It was foolish and it was just wrong. I agreed, and for a stupid sewing machine when I could have bought my own. They looked at each other and they both laughed. Danka for coming here today, Mary Lou. You've brightened my gloomy day like a shaft of light, no ray of sunlight on a gray and gloomy day. I'm glad. It has been gray and dismal lately. I might visit your mother on Saturday if you think that would be all right. She'd love a visit. Do you have time for a quick cup of coffee right now? Mary Lou shook her head. I don't think that would be a good idea. I see what you mean. But we can still be friends, can't we? Of course. We'll always be friends. Good. As a friend, will you come to Adeline and Joshua's house with me when they come back? I'd be embarrassed. I embarrassed myself with Joshua. Nay, you didn't. She looked over at him. I did. You don't know the half of it. I thought I liked him, and I just made a fool of myself. You didn't. I did. He raised his voice a little. Nay, you didn't. That made her giggle. You don't know the half of it, she repeated. I know you made lunch and brought it in for him at work one day. You know that? He chuckled. Yeah. I told Joshua I would love for a woman to do that for me. I think Joshua already liked Adeline at the time. He liked her for a very long time before he did anything about it. I wish I'd known that back then. Don't worry about Joshua, he's not all that. Mary Lou glanced at Jacob's smiling face and gave him a smile in return. Will you? He asked. Will I what? Come to visit Joshua and Adeline with me? When will they be back? Tomorrow. She bit her lip. When do you want me to visit with you? Soon. We're running out of time. It'll be Christmas soon. Don't remind me. Don't you like Christmas time? He asked. I do. I love Christmas. She didn't want to tell him that at her age it was awful to see the Christmases go by, one after another, without having a family of her own. He was a man, he wouldn't understand. Me too, he replied. Okay, I'll visit them with you. I like Adeline. Good. I'll let you know when. Mary Lou nodded. Okay. Jacob had barely jumped down from the buggy after they reached his house when his mother came rushing toward her buggy. Mary Lou's first thought was that something else had happened. Mary Lou, are you having dinner with us? Nay, I have just driven Jacob home. Everything is fine, Mom. Could you stay and have dinner? She asked Mary Lou again. I was going to visit you soon, she replied. And why not tonight? I could do with some cheering up and some female company. I'm surrounded by men all the time. Hey, thanks a lot. Jacob chuckled. She ignored her son. Won't you, Mary Lou? I miss the days when you used to come and have dinner with us back when Isaac was courting you. That was something that Mary Lou did not need to be reminded about. Jacob said, Any chance of you staying, Mary Lou, just to make my mother happy? He pulled a sad face. Yeah, won't you please? Mrs. Fuller asked. Well, if I could use your phone in the barn, I could call my mother, and if she happens to answer, I can let her know that I'll be having dinner here. Go with her to the barn, Jacob. Yeah, Mom. I'll be waiting inside. If you can't stay, don't leave without saying goodbye. Mary Lou agreed, and then Mrs. Fuller went back into the house. It felt nice to be wanted, but she wasn't willing to let her guard down just yet. I don't know if this whole thing is a good idea. It's only dinner. I'll protect you. From what? From whatever you're worried about. She couldn't tell him that she was worried about falling in love with him, and the ramifications that would come with that scenario. Without saying another word, she got down from the buggy, pulled her cape tighter around her shoulders, and walked with Jacob into the barn. Dinner that night at the Fullers was different from the ones Mary Lou used to have when there were 7 sons around the table. With 3 of them now married and Timothy on Rumspringa, there were only 3 sons there. It was a great deal quieter. As she ate her way through roasted chicken and roasted vegetables, she was pleased that the conversations were on subjects that didn't make her uncomfortable. Although she knew she wasn't to escape them entirely. The uncomfortable conversations started when she was alone with Mrs. Fuller helping her do the dishes. You must think I'm dreadful inviting you to dinner, and now you're helping me clean up. I insist. Mrs. Fuller giggled like a girl. She seemed nervous. Do you forgive Jacob? He said he deceived you. Well, the thing is that he did, but I let him. And I also did the wrong thing in covering up something that I shouldn't have, if that makes sense. We both did the wrong thing. He explained everything to us. I know the 2 of you have become close. Did he tell you about Timothy, and what's going on with him? He did, and I promise I won't say anything. My lips are sealed. I appreciate that. Everybody will find out in time. Timothy has brought shame upon the whole family. It made me realize something. What's that? No one, or nobody's family is above things happening like this. There was nothing I could do to prevent it. I raised Timothy the same as the others. He was warned that something like this might happen, the same as we warned all the other boys in the family. Do you think less of my family now that this has happened, Mary Lou? Nay, not at all. I feel just the same. I've always appreciated your family, and your family has a very good name. My aunt sent my cousin here and told her she should try to marry one of your boys. She could tell by Mrs. Fuller's face that she was pleased about that. Is that so? Yeah, she'd heard about them. I heard that your cousin has gone back home now. Mary Lou picked up a tea towel. That's right. We didn't really get along too well. A lot of that was probably my fault looking back. Hindsight is a good thing, and we can learn many lessons from it if we keep our heart open. I guess so. Mrs. Fuller plunged some more dinner plates in the hot sudsy water. When Mary Lou had finished helping Mrs. Fuller clean up the kitchen, it was time to go. Mrs. Fuller managed to pressure her into having hot tea before she left, but Mary Lou was able to get away soon after. Walk her to the buggy, Jacob, Mrs. Fuller ordered him. I was going to, Mom. Jacob took hold of Mary Lou's cape and opened the door for her. Once they were on the porch, he swirled the cape through the air and settled it around her shoulders. Danka. It was nice to have you here tonight, having dinner with my family like you used to. It wasn't exactly the same. It was better, Jacob said. As they walked to the buggy, Mary Lou said, I hope everything works out well for Timothy. Forget about him, what about me? She stopped still and faced him. What about you? He put his hand on his heart. I've confessed to your parents how I feel about you, and I've confessed the whole bit to my parents. Normally I would have kept quiet about those things, but thanks to my stupid nonsense I had to make a confession. Everyone knows, but you've said nothing about it. I don't know how you feel about me. She stared into his eyes that were twinkling and reflecting the light of the stars. She shivered with delight. He stepped in and put his arm around her. Are you cold? Nay. Are you going to keep me guessing? I'm a little nervous, that's all. Of me? He smiled warmly at her. She could never be scared of him. Things have never worked out for me in the past. I just fear another failure. There are no successes without failures. She looked down, unable to look at him while all the terrible things she'd ever done ran through her mind. I've done a lot of wrong things in my life. Haven't we all? You have an answer for everything, Jacob. She wished she had his confidence. Maybe it was youthful confidence, all of hers was gone. Yeah, I do. I should get home. Can I see you tomorrow night? I don't know. It's so close to Christmas and we've got visitors coming. I'm sure to. He stepped back and she realized she wanted him close. Mary Lou, give us a chance. Us? I've never felt like this about anyone else. She was unable to believe his words. Every girl, nearly every girl wanted to be his wife, and he wanted her? Could she let go and trust? I'm scared, Jacob. Tears came to her eyes. He walked closer and wiped away her tears. Then he put his arms around her, and she buried her head in his shoulder. In his arms she felt she was home. Softly he asked, what are you scared of? Failure. I told you before, without failure there's no success. Failure is awful. How good would success feel? She put her head up and looked into his eyes. I guess it would feel pretty good. He smiled. See me tomorrow night just for an hour. I'll collect you from your place at 7 and we'll take things very slow. The warmth of his smiling face and his caring arms around her gave her the courage to nod. Really? Yeah, but slow like you said. Okay. Can I go home now? She asked. He chuckled. I guess so. I'm glad you had dinner with us. You made both my mother and me very happy. I'm glad. Jacob led the horse around and pointed the buggy toward the road. Danka, Jacob. She drove past him. Bye, Mary Lou. As she drove home on the cold winter's night, there was peace in her heart. Something about being back at the Fullers' house was different. Maybe something could happen between her and Jacob. Chapter 20. Relax, Mary Lou's father told her when she was waiting for Jacob the next night. That's easy for you to say. This is a proper date, a real date. He chuckled. You've had a couple of practice runs. Although I do remember some nerves back in my day. Her father was trying to make her laugh, but she wasn't in the mood to find anything funny. Your father's right. Mary Lou spun around to look at her mother, who was walking out from the kitchen while drying her hands on a hand towel. Jacob likes you, he even told us so. That just puts me under a lot of pressure. Don't either of you understand that? I'll wait on the porch. Nay, it's cold outside. Don't go out yet, her mother urged. Mary Lou looked at her parents in turn. They meant well and she loved them, and she didn't want to be short with them. It was just that she needed to be alone with her thoughts. She swung her cape around her shoulders, pulled on her black overbonnet, and to make up for her harsh words, ran to kiss her father on his cheek, and then she kissed her mother. They both looked at her, stunned, and she headed out the door. Her mother had been right. It was freezing. She pulled the cape tighter around her and walked up and down the porch in an effort to keep warm. As she walked, she pondered her history with the Fuller family. Then her thoughts turned to Timothy. Might she be able to do anything to help him? Perhaps she could talk to Taylor. If Taylor had a woman to talk with, a woman who also knew Timothy and his family, Taylor might be better able to understand Timothy's point of view. If she could at least smooth the way for him and his family to see the baby, then she would have done a good thing. It was just before 7 o'clock when Jacob made his way toward Mary Lou's house. When it came into view, he was pretty sure he saw her pacing up and down by the front door. As he got closer, he saw he was right. She walked out to meet the buggy. What are you doing out here in the cold? After she had climbed into the buggy, she answered, Sometimes I like to be alone. Need to be alone, I should have said. I know the feeling. I was just thinking about Timothy, she said. Timothy. You should have been thinking about me. She smiled at him. I'm talking about his situation. He glanced over at her. And? I'd like to do something to help. That's nice of you, but I don't think anybody can do anything at this stage. We just have to wait and see what happens and pray. I was thinking it might help if I could talk to Taylor. She might feel differently talking to a woman. More relaxed, maybe. That's very nice of you. I'll let Timothy know you've offered. Now forget about him for tonight and just concentrate on me. Remember, it's only an hour, she replied. I thought I might be able to change your mind. Nay. She shook her head. How about Christmas then? Can I change your mind about that? In what way? I know you don't want to come to my family's house on Christmas Day, but would you see me just quickly? Mary Lou could barely keep the smile from her face. I'd like that. That was the best news Jacob had heard for quite some time. Seriously? Yeah. He knew Mary Lou was a forthright girl, and she'd taken the lead in pursuing two of his older brothers after her relationship with Isaac ended. Now he wanted to be the one who did the pursuing. He could ask her to marry him then and there, but he had given his word that he would take things slow. Now he was confident, more confident than he had been, that she might say yes. Danka for seeing me tonight, he said. I have to admit I'm nervous. Mary Lou clutched her cape at her neckline. He glanced over at her. Nervous about being with me? It's different now that I don't have a reason. I mean when I'm not covering for you. Ah nay, Mary Lou. I'm so sorry for deceiving you. I just... Shish. Don't say anything more about that. Let's start afresh. We can't forget what's happened, he said. I guess not, but... There's a sewing machine outstanding and I always pay my debts. I mean to say, I would if I'd ever had any. This is my first debt. Jacob Fuller, you're crazy. You don't owe me anything. I want to buy you that sewing machine, and as I recall, you had a particular one in mind. Forget it. I can't. It's too late. She narrowed her eyes. What do you mean? I found a nice old man who sells all makes and models of machines, and he's agreed to keep the store open for us tonight. Don't you dare. Too late. It's all been arranged. She pulled on his arm. Nay, Jacob, this is too awful. Stop the buggy. His heart sank. He'd made the wrong move. I just want to do something nice for you. Tears welled in her eyes. Stop the buggy, she repeated. He pulled the buggy off to the side of the road, expecting to get an earful. Instead, she leapt from the buggy and ran from him. For a second he watched in shock, and then he jumped out and ran after her. Mary Lou, stop. I'm going home, she yelled over her shoulder. Mary Lou ran away from Jacob, ran as fast as she could. This wasn't the man for her. She wasn't a match with him. A second later, she'd landed on the ground with a thud. She hadn't seen whatever she'd caught her foot on under the long grass. Before she could pick herself up, Jacob was there. "Are you okay?" "Yeah." She sat up and felt her hands stinging. She'd put them out to break her fall. "Why were you running away?" She didn't want to bring attention to her tears, so she left them to trickle down her face. "I don't know." He sat down next to her, ignoring the cold ground, and gently pushed back strands of hair that had fallen over her face. "I care about you, Mary Lou. I care about you a lot. I don't deserve you." "It won't work between us," she replied. "Why would you say that?" He frowned. "Nothing works out for me. Haven't you noticed? I must be bad luck or something." "Are you talking about relationships?" She nodded. "No one was right for you before, but I am," he said. "You might think that now, but then you'll get to know the real me." "Mary Lou, I already know the real you. You were at the house nearly every day for the 2 years you were dating Isaac. You're kind and helpful and caring. Exactly the woman I want to raise my kinner." Mary Lou was unable to believe her ears. "Did you hear me?" "But..." He shook his head. "No buts. I told myself I'd take things slow, but I can't have you running away from me again. I want us to get married and have lots of babies. I want to see your smiling face every day." He was saying all the things she'd longed for him to say. She still felt unworthy of a man like Jacob. "My hands hurt." Gently, Jacob took her hands in his. "Let's get you cleaned up." He pulled her to her feet. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pressure you." "You didn't." "Didn't I?" She shook her head and looked up into his eyes. "Did you mean what you just said?" "Yeah, I want to marry you." He gently placed his hands on her shoulders. "Mary Lou, will you marry me?" Her eyes widened. "Can you overlook all my faults?" "If you'll overlook mine." She giggled. "I will." He pulled her into his arms, and she rested her head against his chest. She was just the perfect height to cuddle against him. "Danka, Mary Lou," he leaned down and whispered into her ear. "This was the last thing I expected. I can't believe I'm going to be married like all my friends. This Christmas is going to be the best one ever. I'll make certain of it. Unless we make next Christmas even better. Now though, we have an old man who's keeping his store open for us. I truly don't need another sewing machine, Jacob. You'll need another one soon when you're sewing for me and you, and all our kinner." She giggled. "Okay, you win." He kept his arm around her as they walked back to the buggy. I like that answer. This relationship is getting off to a good start." "I hope it stays that way," she replied. "It will, Mrs. Fuller." He pulled her closer to him. "I'm not Mrs. Fuller yet." "Close enough." In her heart she doubted she deserved Jacob, but maybe God knew she was serious about changing. All of Mary Lou's prayers had been answered. She sent up a silent prayer of thanks. Thank you for listening to Forbidden Amish Romance. The next book in the 7 Amish Bachelors series is Book 5, The Quiet Amish Bachelor.